This guy is just vibing, living a carefree noble life, eating gourmet meals every day, and chilling in the baths with beautiful maids. He's doing all this without even realizing where he is until the moment a maid casually mentions his family name, Alessio. That's when it hits him he is royally screwed up. It turns out he's ended up in the world of a game he used to play called Psychedelia. This entire world is destined to be trashed by the 5 great sins, and he's been reincarnated into the body of the third son of one of the absolute worst noble families imaginable. His older brothers are the kind of scumbags the world has never seen before, and this entire family is destined to be the first one destroyed. Laying on his bed, he begs to return to his original life, because he sees zero point in living comfortably just to die in 10 years. He's literally weeping, thinking his current situation is worse than dealing with 6 months of unpaid wages. Stuck in a fantasy world, as a character with no special perks, our boy feels completely useless until a light bulb finally goes off. Since he knows exactly what's going to happen in the future, he realizes he might actually be able to change it. In order to eliminate the main causes behind the world's destruction, Alan decides to reform the 5 great sins. Luckily, for the sake of his current peaceful noble life, these sins are currently just children. 2 months later, our protagonist has successfully rescued some orphans from a human experimentation center. He pulled this off with the help of Ivan, a knight he recently hired. Even reports that he has left the management of the orphanage in the hands of a girl named Yushia. Our hero nods in agreement, realizing he made the right call picking Ivan for the job, as the knight is surprisingly skilled at handling these types of tasks. However, Alan struggles to show any facial expressions, which leaves Ivan puzzled and wondering if what he just heard was actually a compliment. Our boy notes to himself that he's simply unable to move his facial muscles. He reflects on how Ivan is a rare gem in the world of Psychedelia because he remained honest and loyal despite being surrounded by betrayal, which is exactly why our protagonist hired him the moment he found him. Returning to the report, Ivan mentions that the only reason he was sent there was to save Yusha. As Alan confirms this, Ivan remarks that the girl is built different. With his experience as a mercenary, the knight can tell Yusha is no ordinary child. She seems incredibly strong, and he can understand why she simply accepted being locked up. He's curious why our boy didn't just bring her back to the estate. Alan agrees with the sentiment, but internally, he thinks it might look like he's neglecting her instead of utilizing her potential. In reality, it's all part of his plan to keep her in the orphanage. Yusha Bloya is a member of a bloodline that draws power through a contract with an indescribable, otherworldly being. She is destined to become the sin of wrath among the 5 great sins, eventually causing hundreds of thousands of deaths as a monster. However, Alan believes that if she grows up peacefully, she wouldn't turn out that way. He makes an excuse for leaving her there, simply stating that it isn't the right time to bring her in yet. This leaves Ivan speechless. Our hero further adds that the matter must not be leaked, then hands over a handwritten letter for Ivan to deliver to Yusha. Alan wrote this to calm her down, knowing she's gone through the trauma of human experimentation. Later, after Ivan leaves the estate, our protagonist reflects on the letter. While it appeared to be a message of comfort, he actually wrote an incantation he heard in the game dozens of times. According to the Archbishop, this can be used to befriend the Blood Clan. Our boy used this incantation in the game to try and calm down wrath, but it failed back then, because it was already too late for her, ultimately costing him his life. No, our hero thinks it might not be too late. He feels relaxed after removing one of the 5 destruction flags, although he finds it funny that a single sentence can make someone friends with a monster. He believes the thoughts of those in the realm of fanaticism are just unpredictable. In the meantime, Yushia has read the letter, and she admits the magic power within it is overwhelming. She figures out that the person who wrote to her is Alan, but it pisses her off that he didn't call her to his side. She emits a deadly aura, and, surprisingly, uses visualization magic, a feat usually reserved for those at the master level. Suddenly, she recalls our boy saying it wasn't the right time to meet, and strangely, that excuse seems to work on her. Yusha calms down while interpreting the quote, considering it a promise that only her master meaning Alan would understand. Yusha is the sin of wrath, and the daughter of the Blood Clan, the Bloody Queen Yusha. Meanwhile, back with Alan, he thinks he's managed to stretch his luxurious lifespan a bit further. He even imagines the bright moon in the sky is cheering for him. Now, our protagonist is fully encouraged to begin work on his next target. A cascade of books falls on Alan while he's busy searching for a clue regarding the location of the third boss. Right then, Ivan appears and reports that he has dispatched the second child as ordered. Our protagonist's main concern is whether the knight treated the child gently. Ivan nods, but before he can complete his report, the study door is absolutely destroyed. The intruder is none other than the second brother, Tonio Palacio. He mocks our boy for reading books despite being illiterate, but Alan remains quiet in the face of Tonio's insults. Our hero is so annoyed by this behavior that he wonders how the original Alan managed to live like this. While he'd love to fight back, he chooses to kneel and take his leave instead. Tonio is immensely pleased by this submissive behavior, but in that very moment, he is nearly struck by a dagger. The one who threw it is Alan's first brother, Leo Palacio. Now, both brothers glare at each other with killing intent, mocking one another's stench. In the game, the Palacio family members were merely minor characters who disappeared quickly, yet they possessed overwhelming power. Therefore, Alan decides not to get involved with his brothers, as they fight over the position of family head. One is an underworld boss known as the Prostitution King, and the other is a drug lord running a massive cartel. As the two brothers begin brawling in the study, Alan and Ivan flee the room. Our boy is determined to live a happy life as a supposedly incompetent, illegitimate son. They eventually return to Alan's room, where Ivan reports that the second child doesn't seem ordinary either. Seeing how dumb our protagonist acts, Ivan is confused, and wonders how someone like Alan could discover secret human markets and illegal slave trades to rescue children. To the night, our boy looks like someone who can even take care of himself. He considers Alan odd for sending this second child to the orphanage as well. Our hero notes to himself that these children aren't just beyond ordinary, they are at a world destruction level. The Allied Kingdom consists of several nations, and the second child was found in the illegal slave market of the Killian Kingdom. This child is the second boss of psychedelia, Des and Killian. After being sold as a slave and abused across various locations, he eventually became the sin of sloth and eliminated kingdoms in the most terrifying ways. This was the part of the game where most players were absolutely terrified by his cruelty. In reality, the sin of sloth is a diligent person who repays exactly what has been done to him. Therefore, our boy specifically told Ivan to treat him with kindness. Alan gives the same reason he gave before: the time simply hasn't come yet. Still, his hand trembles as he sips his tea. He expected this answer, but wonders if the letter sent to Yusha was regarding this second child. Our protagonist confirms this, noting that he also added some everyday venting to build familiarity with her. Additionally, he asked her to take good care of the child he was sending her way. At the orphanage, Dios doesn't play with the other kids. Much later that night, Yusha approaches him, recognizing just how broken he looks. Surprisingly, she talks about the thing that left those scars on Dios's body, the black coat. She unexpectedly congratulates him on being chosen by the Great Moon. As a chosen one, she advises him to feel his granted power and draw out what truly belongs to him. She insists that if he shows loyalty and follows only that person, he will surely get his revenge. Under the influence of her words, Dios emits a vast quantity of energy. Holding Alan's letter under the moonlight, Yusha decides to send a reply. The next day, our boy is busy in the study again, searching for the third boss. Suddenly, Ivan bursts in with terrible news: Alan's second brother has just died. It's quite unexpected for Tonio to die this early. Later, our protagonist attends the funeral where, shockingly, his own father is present. With women on both sides, it's a total mess, and Alan finds it insane that drugs and women are present at a funeral. More importantly, he finds it weird that Tonio supposedly died from an accidental fall. He wonders if the story settings have changed, because in the game, the first brother killed the second only after years of struggling for the inheritance. Now, Leo is simply amused by the unexpected bonus. While Alan suspects the work of Leo or his supporters, he puts it aside to focus on the problem of the 5 great sins. Eventually, the year passes, and the succession issue is resolved. Leo has taken over the drug business, and the family estate has become peaceful. Meanwhile, Alan has grown more familiar with Yusha through their letters. He believes that building this familiarity gradually will eventually help him. Yusha writes about her friends Anna is good at hide and seek, Raiden likes war games, and Dios loves puppet theater. Reading this, Alan remarks on how good those kids are. He also notices from the letters that the sponsorship list has increased again. He finds it strange that such a small orphanage is attracting so many sponsors, but he then doesn't pay it much mind. Right then, the knight remembers something the young master was searching for. With the help of the Information Guild, he has found a clue. Our boy feels a sense of satisfaction, thinking it must be an ancient text about the third boss. He's excited to finally find that child as well, finding the evening quite peaceful. However, later that night, people are being killed at a drug distribution site called Margot. 2 men discuss how generous the Palladio elder is with compensation. One man remarks that their organization has grown to hundreds of people and will only get larger. Suddenly, both men find that their people are killing themselves, moving as if they are puppets. The long-haired man also begins moving against his will, and within an instant, all the men have taken their own lives. The cloaked figure enters the scene. It is Dios, accompanied by Yusha. She absolutely enjoys his puppet theater, and she notes that the sponsorship list, the list of those they have eliminated, has grown as well. Dios curiously asks if what they are doing is meaningful, but Yusha only asks if he is feeling sympathy. He shakes his head, knowing these people were grinding humans to develop drugs. He isn't sure how this helps his revenge. Yusha explains that this place will become the foundation for that person to return, and it cannot be shabby when they arrive. She claims this is the will of that person. With that, the two of them leave the scene, engraving the symbol of a blue moon on the ground, the symbol of their hero's sword. 2 years have passed since Alan and Yusha began their frequent exchange of letters. Currently, Ivan is struggling to find our young master within the estate, but after searching for some time, he finally locates him in the back garden. Alan appears to be practicing something in the quiet space. Ivan reports that he has successfully sent the 5th child to the orphanage, news that brings our hero a sense of total bliss. Over the last year, our protagonist has successfully located the remaining 3 sins. To celebrate, Alan treats his personal knight to some snacks. He reflects on how much he struggled to find the 3rd child, who was destined to become the sin of greed. Since Ivan has worked so hard, our boy treats him to macarons, and instructs him to rest, acknowledging that the knight has traveled everywhere for his sake. Now that the mission to fill the orphanage is over, Ivan feels a deep sense of relief. Lying on the grass, the knight wonders aloud if our hero is finally happy. Alan nods in confirmation, but Ivan points out that his master's face doesn't show it at all. Even with a completely plain expression, our boy insists that he is indeed smiling, though Ivan eventually gives up on the argument. Later, while lying on the grass, our protagonist notes that things are going much more smoothly than he expected. The bosses of Sichtelia only became the 5 great sins due to their tragic histories, and Alan believes that by rescuing them early, the possibility of them reaching that dark state has become low. Initially, he had worried he would find the children in poor condition. A new letter from the orphanage suggests otherwise. Ivan delivers the report, which states the orphanage is running smoothly, and the children have become much more cheerful. Because of this, our boy decides not to hire a professional child care teacher. He never expected Yusha to manage the facility so well and wonders if she had some past attachment to such a place. He concludes that she is a good kid. In her letter, she reassures Alan that everyone is healthy and growing well, specifically telling him not to worry about Dios anymore. It feels good for our boy to know the children are thriving, especially since their growth environment is vital to preventing the rise of the sins. However, Ivan is frustrated that our protagonist hasn't actually met the children yet. Alan tries to dodge the subject because he personally has no desire to see them. While getting close to them might be beneficial, the memory of how tragic and horrific their paths were in the game makes him feel like throwing up. Even though he rescued them before their awakening, our hero remains terrified of them. Turning away, he gives a rough estimate that he might meet them in 5 years. Now that the 5 sins are gathered, Alan begins to focus on his own self-preservation. In this fantasy world, magic is essential, and luckily, his current body possesses the talent for it. Suddenly, Ivan mentions an organization called Blue Moon. Alan is entirely unaware of the name, but Ivan explains that they are a famous group known for destroying criminal organizations. Our boy doesn't pay much attention, assuming that since no such group existed in the game, they will likely disappear soon. Ivan adds that they also eliminate corrupt nobles, expecting his master to have heard of them, but Alan simply ignores the comment and tells the knight to sleep in the room next to him. Later that night at the orphanage, Yusha receives reports on the activities of Blue Moon. One child, Scylla, reports that she has eliminated everyone at her target location. She is the sin of pride and confidently reveals that her identity remained a secret because her clothes were specially made by another child named Ryan. Xiaolong adds that she offered to spare her targets if they could guess her eye color, but none of them succeeded. Ryan, who is actually the sin of greed, boldly reports that she has burned the corpses as well. Another child, Raiden, reports that the South is clean too. As the sin of mesophobia, he turned the men from the Avalon organization and an illegal experimentation facility into something unrecognizable. Yusha is satisfied with their work, reminding them that they exist for the Great Moon. This secret organization, Blue Moon, worships the Great Moon, but Diaz points out a looming problem. It pisses Yusha off to think there could be any issue when everything is supposedly under that person's will. Diaz explains that the head of Avalon is the son of the Count family where Alan lives. Furthermore, he has discovered that the eldest son of the family is targeting that person. Hearing this, Yusha emits an overwhelming amount of energy. The letter she holds instructs her to get rid of the threat, and she crumples the paper in anger, agreeing with Diaz's assessment. 2 years later, Alan's father dies. Although the official cause is listed as a heart attack, our protagonist knows the man abused drugs until his last breath. Nearby, people discuss a recent raid by Blue Moon. Our young master notes how concerned everyone has become regarding the group. The funeral ends in silence, with no one truly mourning the Count. Back in his room, Ivan asks about their next step since the eldest son, Leo, is set to become the family head next year. However, the knight is puzzled to see our boy packing his bags. Surprisingly, Alan wants them both to leave immediately. Ivan wonders if they are fleeing the territory, but Alan explains they are heading south to Roadmill, a small village. As they depart, Leo observes them from the estate. After enjoying 3 full days in the village, they return to the estate, but only because our boy has come for the funeral of his first brother. He hadn't actually planned on returning, and is deeply confused to see Leo die so soon. The cause of death was a sword through the heart, and there is no clue as to the identity of the murderer. When Alan tries to ask a servant for details, the man reacts with sharp fear and apologizes just for making eye contact. This behavior leaves our young master puzzled. Soon, Ethan leans in and whispers, asking Alan if he is the secret mastermind who eliminated the Avalon organization overnight. Our hero is left in total shock. On the day Alan left for Road Mill, in the carriage, Ethan wondered why he had chosen a village instead of a city. Before answering, our boy reflected that this village was the final destination of his plan. He had saved the 5 great sins from their struggling lives, and prevented a future in which the whole world is destroyed. Road Mill, on the other hand, has no connection to the original story plus, it has a palatial. Our protagonist plans to live a luxurious life like a noble. However, he reveals to Ethan that there is a reason for everything. Ethan is not satisfied by his answer, as he knows Alan always brushes off things that bother him, but our hero insists on leaving things like that. Leo had started to think about whether to kill him or not. Even though he found Alan useless, he still considered killing him with poison after their father's death. But now that Alan has left the estate, Leo feels there is no reason to kill him anymore. Still, Leo finds them super annoying, maybe because of things like Avalon not doing well recently. Yet, he orders his man to follow their carriage. His man, Alman, asks if he wants to eliminate him. Leo is stunned, as he never expected his right-hand man to question him, and he reminds him to do as he is told. Alman pierces his sword right into Leo's chest. Leo gets a huge shock, being betrayed by his loyal man, but Alman has decided to get rid of him, as he has enjoyed playing along with him. Shockingly, Alman is actually Raiden, a member of the Blue Moon organization. Weirdly, he reveals that they only believe in the Red Moon. The Blue Moon is his sword, hence, they move when he wields it. They can't let anyone harm the Great Moon. With that, he lands a blow on Leo. Raiden further adds that they can move freely at their own. Well, that is the reason why he waited for Leo to say those words. It took Leo 2 years to say those words. When Leo threatens him with his men, Raiden simply reveals they will wipe out Avalon for good. He leaves the estate, thinking about how Leo acted even when their Great Moon had given him a chance. On the other hand, Alan is happy to spend his peaceful days in Road Mill, waking up and eating whenever he wants. He is now enjoying the life of a true noble, but all of his peaceful days come to an end when they receive a telegram message. Our boy freezes when he comes to know about Leo's death. That's how he turns back to the estate after 3 days. All the servants react weirdly around him. Surprisingly, the reason is that they consider him the mastermind who destroyed Avalon. Now Alan has fallen into some unpredictable, insane situations. Tears come out of his eyes as he wants to know how he became the mastermind. He even points out that our protagonist is the only one who can gain the most from this. After the murder of Leo, Alan has now become the perfect heir with a perfect alibi. Now that Avalon is gone as well, there is no one left to give him a hard time. Due to these reasons, he has become the mastermind with a sword master level assassin working under him. Our hero is confused as ever as to how in the world someone could take down such a big underworld organization instantly. Right then, he remembers the organization that hunts down other organizations. He is actually talking about Blue Moon. However, Ethan reveals that the Information Guild thinks it's not Blue Moon because they have noticed that Blue Moon doesn't leave bodies and always leaves a mar. The thing is, Avalon's members were killed by swords. Our young master starts to shiver as he now knows why he has become the mastermind with the sword master. Our boy reflects that Blue Moon didn't appear in the game, so such a big group can't be the culprits, but the question still remains as to who it must be. Back in the orphanage, Rin reports to Yusha that there were no traces left behind. Xiaolong reports the same thing. Just then, Diaz and Raiden come in and inform them that the remaining Avalon forces were 486 men. Just according to their master, they have cut everyone in half. Yusha is quite pleased by their progress. Yusha is pretty stoked about their progress. In just 5 days, Avalon, the massive organization within the Asteria Kingdom, was completely wiped out. However, Raiden reports that the cleanup is far from over. He's discovered that many more nobles are tied to Avalon, including those from the Altia Duchy. With that intel, every son gears up to handle the remaining targets quietly. Yusha checks in on the status of the Information Guild. Rayan reports they retreating the situation as unrelated to Blue Moon, and Diaz adds that every other guild shares that view, pinning the blame solely on the sword master. Yusha then orders continued surveillance, emphasizing that she doesn't want to bother that person with these details. But when Diaz points out that a blood relative actually tried to harm him this time, Yusha cuts him off. She makes it crystal clear as that person's sword, they don't get to think for themselves. According to her, Blue Moon only moves on command. She strictly reminds them that since this person knows everything, they'd better not disappoint him. On the flip side, Diaz doesn't understand why someone like Yusha is so nervous about simply being found out. Everyone acknowledges her, and everything they do is for the Great Moon. Meanwhile, back at the estate, Alan has been slammed since the funeral. All he wanted was to kick back and live a relaxing life on his inheritance, but Leo's death has brought him nothing but resentment. Even though Leah wasn't supposed to die for another 6 years, following the death of his brothers, all the family responsibilities have piled onto Alan as the soon-to-be heir. A group of employees enters his office lugging books and ledgers. Our protagonist is frustrated, wondering why they were suddenly working so hard. He recalls how lazy they were, always taking shortcuts when the count was around. As the vassals pile documents onto his desk, they start to panic at his icy expression. Terrified that he's angry, they decide to work even harder just to stay alive. Alan realizes they were scared of him because of the rumors, but he honestly just wishes they'd handle their own business for once. Our hero is deep into combat training, leaving Evan completely baffled. Evan wonders how Alan reached the second-year level in just 2 years of self-study, especially since it usually takes 4 years of grueling training, and magic is impossible unless you were born gifted. Our boy just brushes it off with a casual comment about being somewhat talented, though deep down, he knows he's only pushed himself this hard out of pure anxiety for his own survival. The technique he's currently mastering requires precise mana control, and he refuses to let it be half-baked. He never actually imagined using magic in a fantasy world initially. He was excited, thinking he'd be safe once his plan was set. But as survival became a reality, he realized his mana hole is exceptionally small. It's a frustrating setback, as mana capacity is like an athlete's physique fixed from birth, and our young master's is currently tiny. Sitting beside his personal knight, he brainstorms a backup plan for when everything else fails. Just then, Evan informs him of an invitation to a ball. Our boy is a bit confused by the sudden social invite, but later, both of them arrive at the party fully dressed up. Alan is already exhausted. This is a standard networking event for the nobility in the southern Asteria kingdom. Since our protagonist is set to become a count soon, he's determined to forge some connections, believing that social networking is key to a peaceful future. To his surprise, however, every noble bolts the moment he approaches. Evan can barely stifle a laugh but tries to keep Alan from getting upset. Alan, on the other hand, fully expected this. He signals Evan to wait and walks away, reflecting on how he anticipated being shunned for his perceived lack of dignity. He notes that unlike the era of his legendary great-grandfather, the current Palladio house is considered the black sheep of the East, but our hero didn't come unprepared. He's got a plan to use the social skills he's been secretly practicing to flip the script in his favor. He grabs a glass of wine and comments on its unique vintage. A lady nearby glances at him, so our boy ramps up the praise. He thinks he's giving her a gentle, charming smile, but in reality, it's a total creep fest. The lady panics and runs to her father to prepare the wine immediately, which wasn't Alan's intention at all. Meanwhile, the gossip mill starts churning, with people whispering about how he threatened her to get his hands on limited edition specialty wine. Evan, once again, is struggling not to lose it. Later, Evan tallies up the gifts they've received: a fine horse from Palladian Fines, Belanda citrus tea, some crafted metal, and Molentino specialty wine. But Alan just feels dejected. He's realized the Palladio name is more infamous than he thought. Since everyone believes he murdered his own brothers, they avoid him like the plague. Frustrated by the situation, he heads out for some fresh air. Unexpectedly, a red-haired lady seems to have her eye on our boy. Our protagonist stands on the balcony, lost in thought, when someone speaks up from behind, asking for a moment of his time. He wonders who it could be as a girl named Loria, daughter of the Altia ducal house, steps forward. It seems our boy knows the name. He recalls that the Altia family is one of the 3 great villains of Sextilia, the black sheep of the north. He knows anyone brave enough to talk to him isn't ordinary, but there's a catch: he doesn't remember Loria at all, because she never appeared in the game. Without wasting a second, Loria demands his support, claiming she's about to be assassinated. She explains that she was always her father's favorite and was protected as his mistress's daughter. However, now that the Duke of Altia has fallen ill, her sisters are plotting her death. The big picture finally clicks for our protagonist. The reason he doesn't remember her is that she was already dead by the time the game story began. Despite her desperate pleas for help, he gives her a straightforward refusal. She even goes as far as offering him half of House Altia if he assists her, but Alan still isn't interested. Deep down, he admits her situation is tragic, but he doesn't want to get tangled up in someone else's mess. Staying alive himself is hard enough. Besides, he doesn't actually possess the insane powers the rumors credit him with, so he couldn't help her even if he wanted to. However, our hero softens when he sees her look of total despair. To cheer her up, he cryptically mentions that something good will happen to her in the future. As he heads back to the ballroom, Diaz and Ryan are watching from the shadows. They've noted that an Altia has approached the Great Moon. Diaz considers informing the Red Moon that something might be going down with that person, but Rin believes it's unnecessary. According to their intel, Luria is the only member of her family not connected to Avalon, meaning she isn't one of Radon's targets. Diaz figures this is good news, as all the others. Diaz considers this good news, as all the other Altias will be taken care of sooner or later. Rayan then reminds him that their job is to focus on cutting off the information flow. They don't want that person to find out about the Avalon incident that happened back at the party. Alon feels like there's some kind of barrier around him, as people aren't engaging with him at all. Right then, a red-haired lady greets him. Our boy thinks this is finally his chance to get friendly with the nobles, so he greets her back. However, seeing how shady she looks makes him feel frustrated. Then, he realizes he's seen her in the game before. Judging by the way she acts, he's convinced that anyone who approaches him first can possibly be a normal noble. Still, he greets her as Lady Zanania with respect. She's a bit surprised, as she didn't expect him to know who she was. Our protagonist nods because she's actually very famous. The three great villainous houses of the Kingdom of Asteria include House Altia in the north, House Palatium in the east, and the degenerates of Zanania in the west. It turns out this lady, Gaia, is the eldest daughter of Count Zanania. House Zanania is a more refined, corporate-style syndicate. Keeping in mind that he needs noble connections to survive even though the house is already falling apart, our hero gracefully praises her beauty. After thanking him, she mentions she wants to talk more. Even though our boy wants to chat, there are too many eyes watching them right now. Also, deep down, he just wants to leave. On the other hand, observing how cold he seems, Galia notes that he's just like the rumors say. Then she says her goodbyes, expressing a wish for them to meet again, but our protagonist is left confused by her sudden departure. Meanwhile, Rian reports that the information regarding Avalon is being perfectly concealed. However, Diaz thinks there's a new cause for concern. He points toward a man who is keeping an eye on our hero from the outside. Rand decides to just observe for now since they don't have any direct orders, but they'll eliminate him if necessary. On another day, Ivan is confused to see the canyon, which is emitting a dark aura. Alongside Alon, Ivan is puzzled by how dark it looks inside, even in broad daylight. On the other hand, our boy feels accomplished for finally finding it. As they head inside, Ivan hopes this isn't another fake, but our young master reassures him, saying it's the real deal this time. Our protagonist internally thinks about how easy it was to find in the game. Actually, the reason he came all the way here is because of the labyrinth in the south. The Labyrinth of Whispers requires you to solve riddles in 8 chambers to earn a valuable artifact as a reward. Even now, our boy remembers the entire walkthrough. They reach the front of a massive door, which is essentially the labyrinth's entrance. Even though our hero visited this place in the game numerous times, it feels much different now. Even remarks that the structure looks like it was built by hand. However, he's more curious to know how our boy knew about this place. Unexpectedly, Alon reveals that he used to come here often. He even gets confused, but then our protagonist smiles slyly and mentions he was just joking. Inside, they see a number of dragon-like creatures flying around, only to be smashed by 2 giant hands. The catch is, they'll be smashed as well if they don't get their riddle right. But Alon is acting pretty calm, which leaves Ivan stunned. Even though they've been together for 4 years, Ivan still hasn't figured him out. Furthermore, all the missions they've done so far aren't related to each other at all. He has no idea how in the world his master knows everything about this place, especially since he's never even left home before. In the meantime, our boy gets the riddle right, but the door won't open until one final thing is done. As the door starts to open, Ivan thinks that despite everything, following his young master has always led to something good. In the end, he's just dying to know what our hero is planning next. On the other hand, Alon is feeling miserable after trying to look up at the massive door. He nearly sprained his neck. As the door opens, both of them are standing in front of a treasure, but our protagonist only orders Ivan to take the black ring and head back home. Ivan believes it will be totally useless, but our young master states that taking anything else will bring them nothing but trouble. By wearing the black ring, Alon has now obtained the constraint. As soon as they turn to leave, they discover that the piles of stones in the canyon were actually golems. Even in this situation, Ivan only thinks about finding a way to at least get Alon out of there. But surprisingly, our boy steps forward to eliminate those golems himself. Ivan still reminds him that their first priority should be to escape. He tries to stop our protagonist, yelling that second-tier magic won't be enough here. But our hero has a plan. He uses constraint commence with the help of his new black ring. Powerful waves emerge from the ring, striking against the golems. Someone recites a spell to activate the black ring. Alon recalls that this part of the game has selection window, so he knows that voice is actually the labyrinth's clear reward constraint. This is an absorption-type artifact that imposes restrictions on the user in exchange for power. Our boy shivers as he listens to the voice of the labyrinth. Firstly, it states that for all spellcasting, the hand seals of Babaloya shall be absolutely required. The labyrinth then asks what he wants to gain. Adlon replies that he needs the power to twist the laws of the world a little more. The labyrinth then grants his wish. Then, for the second wish, it recites another spell. In all spellcasting, only the sacred words of Babaloya may be used. The labyrinth wants to know what he hopes to gain from this. Our young master wishes for the same thing as before, but surprisingly, this time the labyrinth remains quiet. Our protagonist wonders if he did something wrong this time, as he even prepared the skill icon just in case. He knows that choosing both seals and words for the constraint provides the highest magic attack power. Our hero has mastered all the hand signs and phrases through practice, which means this should work out. Suddenly, the labyrinth accepts his second wish. It announces that those who remember the seals and mysteries of the forgotten great god have received their gratitude, and so they will carry on his will. But Alon doesn't know what they mean by carrying on his will. As the black essence is absorbed, the constraint works successfully. The labyrinth has decided to watch him, as he is now the inheritor of the will. Just then, Even yells to our boy that his second-tier magic won't work here. It turns out time had stopped, and our protagonist returns to the very first moment the golems started their attack. Right now, he's all ready to test the constraint, and the price it demands. Alon activates his newly awakened, thunder-like power. By utilizing the laws of refraction, rebound blue light, and linear diffraction alongside the use of signs, he sends a powerful blow toward the golems. Even is stunned to see all of the constructs being destroyed by our young master in just a single moment. The golems are completely obliterated. With the threat neutralized, Alon and Even start heading outside. Even wonders if our protagonist has been hiding his true power until now, but Alon simply shakes his head, leaving the mercenary even more confused. In his 15 years of service, Even has never seen anything like it, so he asks if that was truly just second-year magic. Our boy nods firmly, though deep down, he is equally baffled. He recalls that the spell wasn't nearly that powerful in the game. In the turn-based combat system of Psychedelia, a spell can be enhanced using a sigil or an incantation per turn, but this time, he triggered a chain lightning spell that was strengthened over 5 times. By using 4 incantations and sigils, stacked thunderblades were amplified together to form a configuration suited for large-scale lightning magic. In exchange for the restriction that required our hero to use a sigil and add an incantation for every spell, Alon has gained something else. He remembers being granted power for inheriting his will, which allowed him to amplify his magic tenfold. However, Alon didn't expect to see these kinds of results. Finally, the boat exits the canyon. Even is super exhausted and wonders who could have created such a dark place, but our boy is lost in his own thoughts. He remembers that the Whispering Labyrinth had another name once spread throughout the gaming community. The area was known as the Labyrinth of Palion. Consequently, Alon tells Even that this place was built by someone named Palion, but Even is too exhausted to fully understand. Deciding to head back east, Alon reflects on their journey, noting they have been out for 3 weeks on this quest. Furthermore, our protagonist has tasks to attend to once they return. Even is shocked to find him more diligent than expected, and with that, they start heading back home. Our hero reflects that while choosing a sigil matching the spell's element increases its effect, and picking the right incantation strengthens its properties, the results here differ from the game. In the digital version, the visuals stayed the same while only the attack stats rose. On the contrary, each sigil here visibly affected the spell itself, and every incantation had its own transformation. Even if it is just a magic technique, Alon wonders if his mana control is exceptional enough to perceive those changes. He decides to test this theory once his mana recovers, feeling fully satisfied by the results. In the end, Ivan and Alon reach their horses to begin their return, unaware they are being observed from behind by Ryan. She returns to the canyon entrance and recites spells as markings illuminate the walls. Soon, words appear, stating that for a friend who would be left alone, the Swordmaster Pelion stood his ground. Ryan recalls that this man countered the invasion of the Black Ones, and defeated Alakolika, the devourer of his subjects' hearts. This is the Radiant Emperor, the Great Palion. Ryan is aware of this history because she was born under a great mission within the ancient library. The thing is, she overheard Alon when he mentioned the place was built by Palion. Ryan notes how much the boy differs from the version of him recorded in history, signaling that something is extraordinary. Additionally, the Great Moon itself once called Palion a friend worthy of reverence. Yet, the incantation our hero whispered doesn't even exist in the records of the ancient library. She simply cannot understand his identity. With that, she steps out of the canyon, delighted to know that everything the Red Moon said was true. She feels a bit ashamed for just following orders when Diaz arrives unexpectedly. Diaz did not manage to obtain the required information, because the man he was after has been eliminated. Ryan decides to report this for proper handling. Later that night at the Simonia Count's house, Kalia realizes that the rumors regarding Alon were true indeed. His gaze was cold and unfeeling, and she recalls him calling her famous. She agrees with that assessment, as Count Simonia is both powerful and renowned. She finds it weird that people find her famous since she rarely socializes. She turns to her father for his opinion, although he remains shockingly quiet. With a snap of her fingers, she takes control of his body and sets him to work. She excitedly points out that no one can suspect her to be the one running the house, while the Count himself is just a fool. She recalls how Alon spotted her spy from the shadows just as someone requests her to come to her room. Immediately inside, she finds the dead body of her spy. According to her informer, the girl didn't reveal any secrets, as the seal didn't activate. Kalia smiles, however, as she never expected herself to be exposed like that. She points out that she was caught off guard the moment they met. On the other hand, Our hero is totally unaware of this whole situation. At the Altia ducal territory, Luria sits hopelessly as she realizes that Alon, the noble of the underworld, possesses eyes as cold as her father's. She considers him someone one must never make an enemy of. Yes, our boy was her last hope. She knows he cannot agree to a deal involving such heavy losses, but the problem is that she has nothing left because of her 4 siblings. Up until now, she has survived solely on her father's mercy and affection. As soon as she steps inside the family mansion, maids inform her that her sister, Lady Phelan, and her brother, Lord King, have taken their own lives. Luria is shocked by this unexpected news. She cannot understand how people who would easily stab their own family could kill themselves. When she asks about her other siblings, Demillion and Marianne, the maid soon discovers that the two have ended each other's lives inside a room. Chaos spreads through the estate, as no one understands exactly what is happening. In the meantime, Redan quietly retreats from the estate, as he is the one behind the carnage. While the maids run in a panic, Luria recalls our protagonist saying that luck would be coming her way. She now takes him for someone who hides his true identity, waiting for the right opportunity to seize power, as the true shadow behind the Count's house. Her body trembles as she realizes the true meaning behind his words. Right after this incident, Luria becomes the hero of the Altia Duchy. She shivers with regret for making a deal with our hero, a man she now views as a demon. But she reminds herself that she cannot betray him now, having seen the end of those who crossed him. She decides to move forward without looking back. 2 months later, Alon receives a delivery from Duke Altia unexpectedly. The Duke has sent him Sir Max wine, an incredibly expensive gift where each bottle costs several thousand gold. Our hero finds a note inside and discovers it is actually from Luria, not the Duke himself. He wonders why she sent this to him, though he also feels a bit guilty for not helping her during their last encounter. According to the messenger from Altia, the gift was personally prepared and ordered to be delivered by hand. Alon is stunned, as he realizes that Luria has officially become the Duke of Altia. In her office, Luria stretches after working non-stop for 2 whole months. Following the death of her father from illness, she ascended to the title during the succession ceremony. She officially ascended to the title during the succession ceremony. While her siblings' deaths were sudden, she managed to avoid all suspicion. All of this followed her participation in the ball, by which time her secret organization had already been wiped out by her siblings. After losing everything, she was horrified, but she now believes that Alon, who initially turned down her offer, actually took control of everything from behind the scenes. She feels stressed, wondering just how far our boy has planned ahead. To avoid burdening him, she didn't even inform him of her father's death. She assumes his plan requires Altia's cooperation, which is why he helped her in the first place. After becoming the Duchess, she unified all the organizations under Altia, yet she still feels she cannot compare it to the power our protagonist has been concealing. She suspects our hero needs something else from her and wonders what she could possibly offer that a underworld tycoon like Palladio doesn't already have. She concludes it must be the renown of the Altia name. Consequently, she decides to focus on her duties, hoping her noble benefactor will be pleased by her gift when he eventually contacts her. Back in Alon's office, the Altia representative takes his leave. Our boy is in shock, unable to process her sudden rise to power. He feels as though something strange is happening. 5 years have now passed since he started living in the fantasy game. Even approaches him, calling him young master before correcting himself to Count. Although Alon is not officially a Count yet, he has been permitted to use the title since the new year. Internally, he feels gloomy because becoming a Count was never part of his plan, but he decides that once he gets used to it, he can start enjoying the perks of nobility. Right then, he receives a letter from Yuxia. Despite the passage of time, they still have no information regarding the assassin who killed Liu. Even wonders if the goal is to take revenge, but after considering how his presence has already caused small differences in the game's timeline, our hero reveals he simply wants to be prepared for the worst. Even teases him for finally acting like a Count, and Alon starts reading the letter. Yuxia informs him that everything is going smoothly, and that everyone is fully absorbed in their hobbies. The report notes that Diaz has become a professional in puppet plays. Silin enjoys playing games with friends. Rian is immersed in her research, and Redan has taken up gardening. For a long time, these monthly letters from the orphanage have become a warm, familiar routine. He is happy to watch them grow while sponsoring them, even though he has never seen their faces. When he asks about their ages, even answers that they have reached the age to step into society as adults. Our boy feels a bit disappointed that they've grown so fast, but he accepts the truth and decides to let them go. Ivan is puzzled, as he assumed those kids were rescued for a specific purpose, but our protagonist wants them to choose their own futures. He believes that since he ensured they won't awaken as it ends, they will be fine on their own. In the game, each boss battle featured narration revealing their unique traits. Yuxia had a talent for faith, Tiaz for the sword, Rian for research, Zolan for combat, and Redan for leadership. He believes that if he places them in the right positions, they will have bright futures. As he prepares to write to them, he decides to give each a gift. It takes our hero the whole day to finish the letters, which even then takes away to deliver. Alon hopes for those 5 children to take these messages and step out into the world. Later at the orphanage, each of the 5 sons receives a personal letter. Some react with excitement, while others become very serious. All 5 children have grown up, and each of them receives a letter of their own. Instead of viewing these as mere correspondence, they treat them as formal directives. Before reading the new instructions, Yusha decides to review the older letters first. Seolin gets incredibly excited to read the messages that were previously only seen by Yusha, and soon everyone is poring over the old documents. To the others, the letters don't seem like directive sheets, they read like ordinary, casual conversation. To this observation, Yusha explains that our boy ordered the letters to be disguised as normal conversation from the very beginning. She points out that in the first letter he wrote her, he asked about her well-being and mentioned his second brother using him as a chair. Yusha interprets this as him pointing out a target for elimination, noting that he ordered her to report back afterward. She even reveals that the letter in which our hero instructed her to take care of the orphanage was actually a coded order to form the Blue Moon organization. This is how she has meticulously followed every word of our protagonist from the start. Diaz notes that such methods must be to prevent information leaks, and Yusha agrees, stating that this is how they should properly decode the directives. However, Diaz points out that it would be much easier to visit Alon in person or use a magic communicator. Reedon concurs, noting the inherent risk of leakage through physical mail, but Yusha coldly reminds them that their role is simply to follow orders. Right then, Seolin suggests they finally read the new directives. The letters assign them to their new posts. Diaz is ordered to Kalaban, the land of knights. Seolin is instructed to head to a colony. Reedon is assigned to the pleasure city. Rekas and Ryan is sent to the labyrinth city, Lartania. Udtia, on the contrary, is instructed to go to the holy kingdom of Resoria. Diaz doesn't quite understand why our hero told him to become a knight, but he notes that Alon has decided to continue their sponsorship. Furthermore, the location of their individual gifts is written in each letter. Consequently, they all decide to head out instantly, with Yusha reminding them never to expose the name of the Blue Moon. 2 months pass as Alon continues researching magic and techniques. He asks Ivan about the assassins who killed Leo, but Ivan hasn't found any leads from the Information Guild. Our boy reflects on how much the game settings have changed since he interfered to rescue the 5 great sins. Gloria, who should have died, has instead become the Duchess of Altea and is rapidly building up her underworld power. Suddenly, Alon orders Ivan to stop the investigation into the assassins, believing he shouldn't involve himself further. In the game's setting, it is nearly impossible to evade the Information Guild's network. He begins to shiver, realizing he shouldn't bother with unforeseen situations that might lead to his death. He decides not to approach secret organizations, as they only react when harmed, and instructs Ivan to drop the matter entirely. Right then, Ivan reports that Diaz has been knighted in Kaaban. 3 months later, Ivan adds that Diaz has already created his own knight order. Alon is stunned, as that implies Diaz has reached an expert level despite not being a knight for very long. Ivan also mentions that the 5th Master Knight is expected to appear within 10 years, a title known as the Sword of Kaaban. Our hero feels immensely proud of him. 6 months later, a full year after the sins became independent, Alon finally becomes a count following his succession ceremony. Alon has finally ascended to the rank of count following his succession ceremony. Ivan enters to drop some major news. Diaz has officially been named one of the 5 swords of Kaaban. As a Master Knight, this is a massive deal. Alon pauses, murmuring in surprise as he wonders if that title is reserved strictly for swordmasters. In the game's lore, a swordmaster is a transcendent being who has moved beyond the aura blade and awakened a unique ability called derivation. According to Ivan, Diaz hasn't actually managed to awaken derivation yet, but the kingdom granted him the title anyway after he took down the 4th sword. This happened right after Kalaban lost a Master Knight to the Northern Barbarians. While it usually takes 15 years just to wield mana and decades to master derivation, Diaz hit this level in just 1 year despite being a total novice at swordsmanship before this. Our boy Alon is convinced that Diaz will soon surpass Reinhardt, the youngest Master Knight in the game, if he can just bridge the gap with derivation. He starts daydreaming about the perks he might rake in from this, but then he sighs, thinking he might not get anything at all. Ivan shrugs this off, noting that Alon only ever sends letters to Yusha. Even so, the letters Yusha receives always include updates on the other sins, as they are all keeping a close eye on one another. Alon hopes for at least a thank you from Yusha for the gifts, and feeling a bit let down, he slaps his own face to snap out of it. He reminds himself that although they awakened as the 5 great sins, they haven't destroyed the kingdom yet. What matters most is that the children are living well. The scene shifts to Kurdum, the capital of Kalaban, specifically the high society residential district where the Lunar Eclipse Knight Order resides. Inside the Grand Enkalian mansion, he is now the captain of the Eclipse Knights, and the youngest Master Knight watches his sister from a window. They wave at each other, and even after a year, Diaz still finds the memory of his transition embarrassing. He had lost everything to the Black Ones, leaving him with nothing but uncontrollable hatred. the Great Moon. Alon, saving his life hadn't been enough to earn his loyalty initially. However, the promise that he could eventually take revenge himself kept him loyal to the Blue Moon. Working for the organization was dangerous, but he didn't care about his safety, completing missions for years to pave a path toward his enemies. Finally, he received his first personal directive. Alon provided the location of a gift at a small southern inn at Regat 10. Though Diaz didn't care for gifts, he went anyway. To his absolute shock, he found his long-lost younger sister at that inn. He thought he had lost everything, but through Alon, he found a sister as precious as life itself. Diaz finds his sister, whom he had long believed was dead. Her name is Shilly, and as they later sit down to enjoy tea together, he asks what happened after they were parted. Shilly explains that after their separation, she was taken away by them. She waited in the darkness for a very long time, and just as it was her turn to be killed, she was fortunately rescued. A few years later, she was on the verge of being sold at a slave market when someone again cleared all obstacles to save her. That savior was Ivan. Since that incident, Shilly has received continuous medicine and support. She even received a letter from Alon, who assured her that she needn't worry about her brother, because both of them were safe under the name of Palacio. Diaz is stunned to see Alon's name, as he never expected the man to expose his true identity. He wonders how his sister could possibly know about the Great Moon, especially since Alon had never been told about Diaz's family. Even Yusha only knew that Diaz had been attacked by the Black Wand. Suddenly, Diaz recalls Yusha's insistence that the Great Moon knows everything. All of his questions fit together like puzzle pieces, and vanish. While he initially couldn't understand Yusha's fervor, he now feels like the foolish one. He realizes that Alon knew the truth all along and was providing hints to the child who would otherwise have been left to survive alone. Seeing him completely zoned out, Shilly calls out to her brother. He pats her head, noting that while his sword had previously acted only on hatred, the Great Moon had overlooked his flaws and shown mercy. For Diaz, who had lived only for revenge against the Black Ones, the survival of his family fills him with deep gratitude. He finally understands why Yusha follows Alon not as a blind believer, but as a loyal subject to a man of infinite foresight. To repay our hero, Diaz vows to reach the pinnacle of Calaban as a master knight and create an elite guard of top-tier swordsmen. Fast forwarding to the present, Diaz has formed his own group and prepares for a briefing. Standing before his elite unit, he declares that the upcoming expedition will be the foundation for the eclipse. He waits for the day he can offer a repayment that satisfies the Great Moon, strictly instructing his knights to prove their worth under the moon before they depart to battle the barbarian. Back at the Palacio estate, Alon is resting peacefully, satisfied that the 5 children have grown up. Suddenly, a gust of wind blows his messy research notes across the room. Since returning from the labyrinth, our protagonist is focused on researching phrases. After organizing his results, he notes that refraction enhances the imperfection of completed spells to expand their area of effect. Repulsion alters the form of the projectile, causing it to transfer, while blue light enhances parallel magic like lightning. Linear diffraction, on the other hand, grants penetration for critical hits. Alon has also established strict rules for these phrases. One must not use unfitting terms, phrases cannot be repeated, and he is limited to 4 arcs due to his mana capacity. He can only use this magic once a day. Since the phrases and the beasts of Babilia were forgotten concepts in the original game, he had to research the mechanics himself. After 2 months of experiments, Alon unleashes his Thunderlight magic. By removing the central point of the gathered magical sphere, he creates an electrical shock through imbalance. Even his seemingly weak magic gains purpose as he chants fixation, compression, collapse, fleeting full bloom. A massive amount of magical power is unleashed. Observing the destruction, our boy concludes that the order of the phrases is vital, remembering how he failed when he attempted to use collapse first. Suddenly, someone yells from behind in disbelief. It is Kalia, who stands with her butler in absolute shock. They refer to his power as Origin, a unique magic supposedly reserved only for 7th Circle mages. Alon is stunned by the comparison, as 7th Circle mages occupy the very top of the magical hierarchy. Kalia and her butler wait in the reception room of the Palacio family, having arrived with 2 distinct purposes. First, the butler carries a card capable of dealing terrible damage to Zenania. Additionally, Kalia wanted to confirm Alon's true intentions and sense the magic that swallowed Palladio while also gauging the strength of the organization protecting him. To her surprise, however, she finds her butler shivering. She finds her butler shivering in fear. Despite being Bianchal, a 5th-rank mage who was expelled from the Mage Tower for human experimentation, and is capable of eliminating an entire battalion with ease, the man is visibly trembling. He had remained arrogant even toward Kalia over the years she supported him, but now he is shaken to his core. Just then, our protagonist enters the room, and coldly inquires about their business. Kalia offers an apology for the sudden visit, explaining that she ended up wandering around while trying to find him. Alon then clarifies that he did not use an Origin. By his own estimation, he would only be around the 2nd rank. He adds that his magic doesn't actually have an internal function, reflecting that it serves neither for defense nor attack. However, both Kelia and Bianchal interpret his words as a sign that he simply doesn't want to expose his power to others. Stuttering in fear, Bianchal admits he must have been wrong. Alon feels a sense of relief and directly asks again about their reason for visiting. Kalia explains that they were on another business trip, and happened to be nearby, so they decided to pay their respects, implying there is no specific motive. Our hero then mentions that he needs to attend to his work and cannot spare much more time. Kalia gets up, thanking Alon for granting them even a brief moment before they depart. He suggests she pay a visit to Duke Altia if she wants someone to talk to, as he believes the two of them will get along quite well. Taking this to heart, she makes a plan to visit the Duke. As our boy and even see them all, even notes that Sinania, a ruined Western family, has come to visit them. Alon has no idea why, but he is feeling under the weather. He worries that if rumors of him using an origin are exposed, those struggling for power will inevitably come after him. As our protagonist turns to go back inside, he believes that Sinania would never truly approach Altia, as both are rivals in the underworld. All Alon wishes is for them to never return. Inside the carriage, Kalia asks Bianchal if that power was truly an origin. The butler shakes his head, and, while still trembling, explains that an origin is magic that draws its own laws upon the canvas of absolute, immutable principles. However, what he saw through his observation eye was that the Count's magic canvas was being torn apart. This means Alon was testing the absolute principles themselves. Bianchal observed him fixing lightning in place, wrapping and collapsing the laws, yet still manifesting the spell. This is a miracle that defies reason, and the butler suspects this was actually the work of a forgotten great god. His head hurts, as he reminds himself to stop thinking further, for such thoughts are dangerous. Having earned praise for pursuing ancient knowledge and researching the magic of the Forgotten Era, he concludes that they should never oppose Count Palcio or make an enemy of him. Kalia sighs, realizing there was no point in trying to discern his intentions. Recalling his suggestion to visit Duke Alti, she believes she has already become one of Alon's pawns. 2 years pass since the 5 children were sent off on their own, and our hero asks for any new information regarding them. While he receives no direct news about the children, he unexpectedly learns that Sinania County and the Altia Duke House have formed an alliance. This news drops like a heavy weight on our boy, as he never expected the 2 pillars of the underworld to unite. Furthermore, their alliance appears proper on the surface under the underworld accord. Alon panics, believing that even after raising those little sinners, this shadow alliance will surely cause the Asteria kingdom to collapse. He cannot believe Kalia took his words so seriously that day, but he tries to shrug it aside, thinking it must be temporary. Nevertheless, he decides to prepare just in case and immediately starts writing to Kalia. He wants to apologize if he seemed blunt, inarticulate, or cold during their meeting. He then orders Ivan to deliver the message. Later, our protagonist reads a letter from Yusha and finds no information regarding Ridan and Ceylon. He wonders if Ceylon has died, thinking that if they had followed his instructions and found the gift, they could have become a warrior symbol worthy of even a Baba Yaga. In the game, there was an item called the Sacred Beast of the Golden Mane Tribe. According to the game setting, if the sin of pride hadn't become a fallen sinner, she would have been a great Langland warrior. Alon had even told her about the hidden treasure she could use for funds, but the bitter truth is that her land is a nation where one can only seize the world through power. The scene shifts to the desert nation of Colony. In a strange place, Theolon, now wearing Alon's gear, stretches as her ordeal finally ends. She thanks him for the precious gift. Having initially thought the essence of the Golden Mane tribe was just a random charm, she realizes now that the stories she heard as a child were not just fairy tales. Her tribe consists of descendants of the Golden Mane tribe, the kings of all beastkin. This tool is a legendary heirloom passed down for hundreds of years, granting power and divine authority. After getting her hands on this, Ceylon faced every trial within her inner world. On the day she was dying as a test subject, the Great Moon saved her life and gave her the power to take revenge on the Black Dragon who eliminated her parents. Therefore, she has decided to repay Alon sincerely. She knows the true meaning behind the gift was not for her to remain an ordinary gladiator. Instead, she plans to become the strongest gladiator ever and gather the Golden Mane tribe to restore their glory. Eventually, she will slay the Black Dragon. Staring at the moon, she decides to dedicate all her efforts to her savior, aiming to bring back the glory of her clan. Under the blue moon, after 500 years, this clan remains the greatest of all beastskin, and the undisputed king among their kind. In Alon's office, Ivan provides updates regarding the 5 children gathered by the Information Guild. According to the guild's reports, Ceylon has earned the title of Golden Flash due to her overwhelming activity in Colony. Luckily, our hero is glad to hear she is doing well. Ivan agrees, noting that Colony is a place where strength allows one to get away with almost anything. Unfortunately, he hasn't heard anything about Ridan since he left to learn the trade in Raxus. Although Ivan has some leads, they are still being verified for reliability. Suddenly, our boy coldly asks if Ivan is busy. Taking a pause, Ivan reveals that he has already finished every task on his plate. Alon then reminds Evan that they need to prepare early, as it will take roughly a month just to reach the magic tower. Evan flinches, as he was entirely unaware they were heading there. It turns out our protagonist had simply forgotten to mention the plan. While Evan points out that it only takes a week to reach the green magic tower, Alon has decided to visit the blue magic tower instead, located near the labyrinth city. With that, Evan begins the preparations. Alon, meanwhile, clearly dislikes riding in a carriage. However, there is an item at their destination that can support his small mana reserve. He sought a nation that could support his small mana reserves, making the trip a necessity within the game. Our boy had spent a great deal of time grinding in Lartania. The labyrinth at the center of the city served as the primary leveling map of Psychedelia. The deeper a player ventured, the better the items they could obtain. Although countless players entered, no one ever reached the end, leading to frequent complaints that the map simply continued downward forever. Consequently, relics and artifacts are continuously discovered in this endless maze, making certified magic appraisers highly respected and wealthy professionals there. A girl named Ryan is soon to take her appraiser exam. Our hero wonders if the gift he sent her was too small, as it was merely an item intended to aid in equipment to appraisal. He decides to provide extra support later if it proves insufficient. The scene shifts to the labyrinth city of Lartania. The city is teeming with explorers and mercenaries and is governed by no one. Nestled in a southern corner is a secretive appraisal shop called Murda. The shop has gained fame for its unique services, attracting nobles and rank explorers as its primary clientele. Among these customers is the Lord of Lartania, who is currently visiting the shop where Ryan works. She has just completed the appraisal of a device that generates flames using mana. The Lord feels grateful, noting that the item is a relic capable of holding an imprint. When he inquires further, Ryan explains that a pinch of mana will maintain the flame for an hour. Fully satisfied, the Lord leaves the shop. Ryan then turns her attention to another device that can also be imprinted. The reason this corner shop is so famous is due to the imprint known as Screech, a gift from our boy. Ryan happily repeats the words from his letter, which encouraged her to become an appraiser. Initially, she didn't understand the command. She believes her master is a friend of Palacio, and a figure from the forgotten era of Outer Gods. While she thought everything was meant to help deal with the Black Ones, she couldn't initially see how being an appraiser connected to that goal. However, upon seeing the gift, she realized its nature was different from anything she knew. She obtained the Eye of the Tail, which quickly identifies items below a certain mana threshold. Ryan realizes the true nature of this item doesn't even exist in the library. After the seals were lifted, and the imprint opened, she decided then to gain power over the Black Ones in the future, viewing this as both an ability and a means to offer sacrifices. Currently, she has 252 sacrifices left until it reaches full bloom. In exchange for increasing the relic stats, it absorbed something that causes its eye to change. It only reacts to specific high-ranking relics if the wrong item is used. The accumulated power vanishes. Correctly appraising artifacts and distinguishing high-rank sacrifices is a job only she can do, having been born within the Library of Eternity. With a vicious smile, she decides to do everything necessary to deal with the Black Wool, believing it all aligns with the view of the Great Moon. 3 weeks later, Elon and Ivan reach the Blue Magic Tower. Unfortunately, the Tower Master is away. Instead, they are met by the Vice Master, a Sixth Circle mage named Pia Clank, who tells them to state their business and leave. Surprisingly, our protagonist finds her face familiar from the main story. Since the current time is before the original plot begins, Pia is still only the Vice Master. In the game, she is a genius who reaches the 8th Circle and becomes the Tower Master in her 20s. This tower possesses massive combat power and holds a status equal to nobility due to its monopoly on specific necessities. As a Vice Master, Pia has transcended ordinary humanity. After Elon reveals his identity, he states he is there regarding the time Re. Pia, who is busy searching for documents, pauses when he claims he can remove it. A time writ, or simon, is a door to an unknown subspace that appears where magic is heavily used, creating anomalies and destruction. Using her observation eye, Pia asks if our boy truly believes he can achieve that with his current talent. She immediately tells him to leave. When Elon tries to explain, Pia cuts him off, pointing out that he shouldn't boast about removing the rift, while keeping the treasure inside. She slams her desk in rage, clearly exhausted by the many people who have come to her with similar claims. Our hero feels she is being unfair, yet he calmly requests that she guide him to the rift so she can see his ability for herself. Pia remains unmoved, believing he is only there to manipulate public opinion after gaining the title of Count through sheer luck. Suddenly, she unleashes a massive amount of mana to prevent him from creating a scene. Alon notes that while she seems busy, she is unexpectedly up to date on gossip and surprisingly scary. Even though he is frightened, he feels desperate and goes straight to her with a deal. If he fails to remove the rift, he will sign over his entire fortune to her. Seeing that she still isn't backing off, he offers to swear a mana oath. This condition interests her, and later, she shows him the way. She reminds our protagonist one last time that if he fails, everything he owns belongs to her. As he steps toward the rift, Pia wonders if he is a mastermind, or just a lucky man. She smirks, concluding he must be a lucky fool for coming here without knowing his place, especially since she noted his mana is barely at the second circle level. She believes he can do nothing. Meanwhile, Alon recalls that one usually doesn't have to work this hard to close a rift. They typically spit out an artifact and disappear naturally within 3 months. Because of this, research on them had stopped. However, this specific rift has been causing trouble for over 2 years. Standing before the anomaly, Pia again tells him to back off if he is incapable. She notices he is preparing to use his bare hand rather than a staff. Deep down, she knows ancient magic tomes describe this as a primitive method, and she tries to stop him from doing something so reckless. But our hero only concentrates on his work. Within a moment, Pia's body refuses to move. In fact, everything around her has stopped. Looking through her observation eye, she unexpectedly sees a massive red eye looming right above Alon. Pia's observation eye activates immediately, beginning to analyze the anomaly before them. After a series of rapid calculations, she begins to see strings of text filled with dark, ominous words. Suddenly, a giant red eye manifests and reaches out toward her, projecting an absolute demand that leaves her face drenched in sweat. Deep down, she understands the weight of this command perfectly. After a brief moment, the giant eye closes and vanishes into thin air. With the phenomenon gone, Elon informs her that the gate is officially closed. To him, the task was relatively simple, as it only required specific items and methods. He then moves to secure the relic he just acquired. Naturally, our protagonist realized he might need to use this method again in the future, so he had cast a convincing spell. Naturally, our protagonist realized he might need to use this method again in the future, so he cast a convincing spell on Pia to smooth things over. He wonders briefly if she fell for it, and it seems she immediately decides to keep the event a total secret. However, noticing her making strange expressions, Elon begins to doubt his success. When he attempts to approach her, she cuts him off with a frantic yell, insisting that she can absolutely keep a secret and won't tell a soul. Our hero is left utterly confused by her erratic behavior. Later, our protagonist prepares to head home with Ivan. Unexpectedly, Dia approaches our boy and offers him a mana recovery potion she brewed herself. Upon closer inspection, Elon realizes it is a top-grade potion. Dia murmurs a question, asking if he likes it, leaving our boy stunned. Just 2 bottles of such a potion cost as much as several lower-rank versions, making the gift incredibly expensive. He wonders if she is truly this thankful for him closing the gate, but in reality, she is only trying to please him because she is keeping a secret of her own. She panics and offers to sign a mana oath to prove her discretion. Elon cannot fathom why she would take an oath over something so trivial, but before he can clarify the situation, she takes the oath immediately. Seeing her reaction, our hero concludes that she simply doesn't want to clear up the misunderstanding. Regardless, our hero has successfully acquired the relic he wanted from the Blue Magic Tower, along with 5 bottles of potion and a binding oath. Inside the carriage, Ivan points out that while the relic was difficult to obtain, it looks far more basic than he expected. Alon remains quiet, only revealing that he absolutely needed it. The item is actually the Seal of the Unholy One, a bracelet with a gem designed to absorb and store mana from the atmosphere. It seems to be working perfectly, although its storage capacity isn't massive. It is more than enough to fill our hero's mana hole. Comparing his limited mana to the support item, he reminds himself that his path is one of magical research and self-preservation, not frontline combat. Still, his thoughts shift back to Pedia, as he remains unsure when exactly she developed her misunderstanding. When they were departing, Elon tried to explain that he was only a second circle mage, but she merely gave him a thumbs up and nodded, seemingly agreeing with everything he said. Reflecting on this now, our boy realizes her reaction was strangely similar to Kalia's. He feels a lingering sense of unease, though he calms himself with the thought that they likely won't meet again in the future. The scene shifts to the Altia estate, where Loria welcomes Kalia. Kalia greets her by commenting on her beauty, and Loria feels comfortable in her presence since they don't need to constantly assess rank or power between them. Strangely, both women find themselves occupied by thoughts of Count Palayu. When Alon suggested that Kalia visit Duke Altia, she only truly understood his intent once she followed the order. As they talk, they realize that both are under the influence of our hero. Their alliance was essentially forged by Count Palladio's command, with him standing above them. Their previous power struggles feel like absolute nothing. Because of this, Zenania and Altia have grown closer. Loria asks why Kalia has arrived so early, as their meeting wasn't scheduled until next month. It turns out Kalia is there to discuss the letter Alon sent the day she left his estate. Even though it appears to be an ordinary apology, both Loria and Kalia are convinced there is a hidden meaning within the text. They decide to decode every single word, searching for a subtext. Eventually, they come to the conclusion that Alon disliked both the aristocratic and royalist factions. They wonder if he intends for them to eliminate both groups, eventually deciding that our protagonist wants to drive out the existing nobles to establish a new regime. Gloria now believes this is why he needed Altia's prestige and helped her become a duke. She is certain that if the Overlord of the West joins them, they will succeed. Meanwhile, back at the Blue Magic Tower, the Tower Master learns everything regarding the closure of the Time Ri. Puzzle pieces begin to fit together on their own, forming a picture of Alon's influence. In the meantime, our boy sneezes a side effect of the conversation happening behind his back and nearly chokes on a sweet potato. He and Ivana are currently taking a break on their journey home. Just then, a letter arrives from Yusha. She has successfully become a priestess in the specific location selected by our hero. The Tower Master of the Blue Magic Tower finally returns. His name is Salam Mfardo, an ETH Circle mage of immense power. Seeing Pedia looking under the weather, he asks if she is alright. With a weak voice, she informs him that she has completed everything he entrusted to her. Noticing her extreme exhaustion, Salam grows worried. He reflects on how she became a vice master at such a young age. She is so blessed with talent that her pride previously knew no bounds. She was always so strict with new recruits that she often moved them to tears. But because she was so serious about her magic, Salam never tried to correct her personality. He believed that once she reached the 7th circle, she would automatically become humble after realizing how limited her achievements truly were. No, however, the situation seems very strange. He tries to cheer her up with a joke about his mission in the northern region, asking if the workload was really too tough for her. She only sighs and reveals that Alon has closed the Time Ri. Unfortunately, she cannot explain how it was closed because she is bound by a mana oath. With a sad face, she simply endures the restriction, unable to say anything more. Salam pats her head, and deep down, he is actually pleased to see that her arrogance has finally been broken. He wonders if the magic used was an origin. Viet is so crushed by the experience that she doesn't even brush his hand away. Consequently, Salam becomes deeply interested in our protagonist. 1 month has passed since our hero returned from the Blue Magic Tower. After acquiring the Mark of the Unrighteous, Alon has gone even deeper into researching magic phrases. Since he can now use magic more times per day, he is making rapid progress. After discovering a new rule, he writes it down in his notes. While the progress seems to align with his arrangements, he isn't entirely certain of the cause. At that moment, Ivan points out that Alon's magic has become significantly stronger. Ivan, it didn't seem like second circle magic before, but now it feels like it is on an entirely different level compared to a few months ago. In fact, Alon's magic just created a massive crater in the ground. Our boy believes this kind of destruction should be impossible for gravity alone. A standard second circle gravity spell shouldn't be enough to crush the earth to this extent, even at maximum power. Now, Alon realizes he wasn't imagining things when he felt his strength increasing. This obvious boost in power is likely not due to practice or the phrases themselves, as higher efficiency usually just means better precision. Phrases act like trigger words to alter attributes, and after months of researching gravity arrangements, our protagonist has started using set phrases interchangeably. He assumes his recent power boost is just a small gain from optimizing these arrangements, so he simply tells Ivan that he is in good condition, which is why he seems stronger. Afterward, Ivan delivers a letter from Yusha. Upon receiving it, Adlon decides to head back inside, as he has already used up his 3 magic spells for the day. Internally, he considers that his sudden strength might be a reward for a curse. In the East, a curse is a ritual where one sacrifices themselves to cast a spell on another. The target suffers a penalty but gains compensation in return. Since no one near our hero is involved with the East, he considers it a possibility. Or, perhaps he is receiving faith from somewhere. He shrugs the idea aside, reminding himself that he is just a count from a small kingdom ignored by the underworld. He tells himself it's perfectly fine to live without overthinking everything. The scene shifts to the Holy Kingdom of Rosario, and its capital, Ruinal. It is a city of pure white that worshipped Sharonia, the goddess of the moon and peace. In the Eastern Prayer House, a knight named Locke greets Yusha. He knows she is a lower-ranked nun who doesn't even wear the sash of holy grace, yet he shows her great respect. He reports that he has saved 8 children and 25 lives from small villages in the East and West, believing he was only able to do so because of her guidance. Yusha shrugs it off, saying he is the one who performed the good deeds. However, Locke insists she guided someone as insignificant as him for 20 years. He was unable to sense even a trace of divine power and was about to give up in despair. At that moment, Yusha reached out and told him to have faith in the moon. At first, he didn't understand, but he prayed to the moon for several days anyway. Unexpectedly, he was soon able to build divine power. Though he briefly feared he had stepped onto the path of heresy by favoring the moon over Lady Sharonia, he now believes all power borrowed from the gods is the same. The sacred artifacts of the goddess shine brilliantly in his hands, proving his divine power. When he previously asked Yusha why she pointed him toward the moon, she explained that while faith comes from invisible belief, it takes a long time to grow. She claimed it is easier to gain results from something that actually exists in the sky. To her, the moon will always be on his side. Locke agreed, thinking it was a better way for a person filled with doubt to find certainty. Back in the present, Yuxia tells him to show his gratitude by praying with her. As it is prayer time, many people have gathered. They enter the hall, and Yuxia goes straight to the sanctuary to begin praying to the great moon. Our protagonist's former ward has officially become a prominent nun of the Holy Kingdom. While reading Yuxia's letter, Alon feels a touch of frustration, finding nothing particularly special in this update either. He takes the news as a sign that everyone is doing well, yet he cannot help but feel a bit lonely. After all, he only receives letters from Yuxia, and no one else. Our protagonist tries to reason through this, thinking that since the other children never saw his face, he is likely just a nice stranger who showed them a bit of kindness. His primary goal was to keep them on the right path so they wouldn't destroy the world in the future, and having achieved that, Alon reminds himself there is no reason to feel disappointed. With that thought, he attains a sense of inner peace. Our boy reflects on how Yuxia still writes to him every month despite her busy schedule, though it still stings slightly to think that only the eldest of the group recognizes his efforts. Suddenly, he jumps in shock upon realizing Ivan is also in the room. Luckily, he calms himself down immediately as Ivan reports that he has gathered information about the kids from the Information Guild. Strangely, Redhan has become a pirate. Our hero is so stunned that he remains speechless for a moment before demanding that Ivan tell him everything in detail. Ivan sits down to reveal big news regarding Ceylon and Diaz. It turns out Ceylon has won 23 consecutive challenges out of 100 against Baba Yaga. For context, the record for most consecutive wins is 41, held by the Lion King, a character who actually joins as a companion in the game. Furthermore, the Kalani military relies heavily on these fighters because they are incredibly powerful, and there is a high chance Ceylon might break that record soon. Ivan then moves on to Diaz's knights, who have successfully taken down Kurga of the Snowfield, one of the 8 barbarian chieftains. These chieftains have become superhuman through various rituals, a fact Alon knows quite well since he defeated the barbarians, and even their god, Athultus, in the game. He is relieved that he doesn't have to deal with them now, especially since Athultus only appears after the 5 great sins descend. Consequently, our protagonist no longer needs to worry about Diaz. However, he briefly wonders if he should have visited them in person to enjoy some of the benefits of their success. Turning to the next report, Ivan discusses Rian, who has become an appraiser capable of applying black engravings to artifacts to enhance their abilities. After hearing about the others, Elon refocuses on the shocking news of Redhan's piracy. Ivan explains the situation involving the 7 isles off the coast of Rakas. Among these, the largest is the first isle, where Redhan has recently become the captain. This news is a massive shock to Alon, as he never expected such a path for the boy. He recalls a meme he once laughed at online that has now become his grim reality, a story about someone who sponsored a child, hoping they would grow up to live an ordinary life, only for that child to become a pirate. Our boy certainly didn't send Redhan away for this. According to the original character settings, Redhan is highly skilled at detection. As a rare member of the Sea God tribe, he is naturally free in the water. Because there are many rare artifacts in the Rakas Sea, our hero had recommended he become a treasure hunter, and even gave him a gift to assist with detection. While Ivan is quite happy to see Redhan becoming a big shot, Alon is stressing out. He wonders how the boy managed to take out the captain of the first isle, considering all the captains are superhuman and the pirates of the 7 isles have never lost a sea battle. He speculates that Redhan might have collected the best relics from the old era. In the game, Alon spent a great deal of time on the treasure hunter minigame to upgrade his own gear, so he assumes Redhan must have climbed the ranks using superior equipment. Still, for Alon, it is difficult to accept his son becoming a pirate. Meanwhile, in the maritime city of Raxus, at the heart of the Principality of Korkia, the first isle stands as the largest of the 7 pirate paradises. Its former captain has been eliminated by a man supposedly blessed by the Heavenly King through sacrificial offerings, the great pirate Crimson Slayer, Radpan. Despite his new title, Redhan remains confused about the Great Moon. Initially, he considered the man a kind soul. Redhan would have died as a test subject if he hadn't met Yuxia and awakened his powers to be on. To be honest, he really wanted to follow Yuxia. That's exactly why he followed the Blue Moon, but everything changed the moment he received a direct order from the Great Moon. Now, he's starting to question if becoming a treasure hunter even meant anything at all. He is driven by a pure desire for revenge against the people who wronged him. His tribe, which lived peacefully on a hidden island, was completely wiped out by beings of darkness. When the survivors finally tried to leave, those island hunters killed Reden's parents and sold him straight into slavery. Therefore, being a simple treasure hunter didn't exactly align with the vengeance he was seeking. By the time the orders reached him, Reden had already made up his mind to follow them. His resolve only hardened when he spotted a ship filled with the exact same hunters who murdered his parents. According to their captain, they have received the Heavenly King's blessing as chosen pirates. Reden initially dismissed all that talk about Heavenly King as total nonsense. However, he discovered that their power is actually granted by the sea god, unlocked only through sacred rituals using parts from the bodies of the sea god tribe. Raiden eventually realized the horrific truth of all the captains of the Seven Isles are tapping into that power. Since his parents' bodies were split into 7 parts and distributed across those isles, Raiden believed the Great Moon was the one behind everything, which is why he'd been sent to this specific spot. He was shocked at first, since he'd never told anyone about his tragic past. Yet, he felt like the Great Moon was actively helping him get his revenge. However, at the time, Raiden felt he wasn't strong enough to stand against the superhumans who possessed the power of the sea god. Right then, he realized there had to be a reason for the gift he'd receive. He came to believe that the Great Moon had planned everything out, paving a clear path for his vengeance. Shortly after he started practicing with his gift, the Goggles of Amrita, he used the device to find artifacts hidden deep in the ocean. The items he recovered were powerful enough to make up for his lack of natural strength. After coming out of the ocean with a massive collection of artifacts, he felt like a fool for just feeling grateful. Since the Great Moon had kept his promise, he hadn't just put Raiden's targets right in front of him, but had also provided the power necessary to strike them down. At that point, the boy finally understood every single order written in that letter. Raiden concluded that the Great Moon wanted him to exact his revenge, and take control of the 7 Isles. He called Uchiha, telling her that everything was for the Great Moon. Those words, which once meant nothing to him, were now glowing with trust in his heart. 3 months later, autumn finally arrives. This season marks the time for Asteria's biennial Grand Social Assembly. Alon is set to participate in the assembly because attendance is mandatory once every 4 years, but our hero is clearly hating every second of the idea. Soon, the carriages of the Krilled and Edorn families join him as planned. It's currently the norm for nobles to travel in large groups to avoid any trouble with bandits. While staying at an inn that evening, Alon is surprisingly questioned by other nobles about why he only has 1 guard. They pointedly suggest that he must be on a super tight budget after accidentally becoming the count. Unfortunately, instead of bandits, he's being troubled by the nobles themselves. Historically, the wealth of Palladio was built in the vast underworld of the East. However, our boy is fully satisfied with his current life after letting go of those criminal enterprises. Since he considers the underworld far too dangerous, he's content living without any major problems. Consequently, the underworld of the East fell under the control of smaller groups, and rumors that Alon became a count purely by luck have basically become accepted as facts. The false rumors about him being the mastermind behind the count's house slowly disappeared, and he's now been demoted to the title of Lucky Brat. Meanwhile, the nobles continue to mock him for being short on funds. Alon feels like they were crossing the line, but then something clicks in his mind. These people are actually the victims of the Palladio family. Both House Krill and House Edorn were once completely under the thumb of Palladio, and at this moment, they were merely venting the sorrow they once suffered on our protagonist. To them, they seem like nothing more than a bunch of petty internet trolls, so he decides to ignore them entirely. In the meantime, even brings some grilled corn from the kitchen, which our boy finds absolutely delicious. As the two of them enjoy their snack, the Lords of Krilled and Edorn keep talking. It almost sounds like a rap battle. Alon and Ivan simply enjoy their corn while completely tuning out the other nobles. The scene then shifts to the northern region, a land of bitter cold inhabited by barbarians. The place looks as though no life could possibly exist. There, the captain of the barbarians, the great Kulkan, one of the 8 barbarian chieftains, has finally fallen at the hands of none other than Diaz. For barbarians, death in combat is considered honorable and glorious, but unexpectedly, this battle ended in a defeat caused by a cowardly ambush. The barbarians were caught in the scheme of a Kalaba knight who had suggested a formal duel, only to betray them. Now, the great Kulkan lies on the bitter snow, feeling a deep sense of shame to end his life this way. Suddenly, he hears a voice telling him to call upon the name they all once worshipped. On the verge of death, the great Kulkan whispers the name of their god, Ultultus. Surprisingly, his body starts to move again at the mention of his deity. He seeks help by calling out the name once more. Ultultus hears him loud and clear, and the god decides to fulfill his desire. The journey of the nobles continued to the social venue, and the mockery didn't stop even after the other family joined with their carriages, but Alon just ignored it. Because, honestly, not feeding the trolls is just basic gamer etiquette. They came out at night, but both our boy and Ethan fully ignored the mocking words. This only makes those 2 nobles nothing but frustrated. Both of them discuss the fact that Alon really doesn't have any additional escort forces. We have checked with an artifact, and have found nothing. Therefore, this made them believe that the rumors about him being a poor noble are actually true. Consequently, they now plan to execute an underworld expansion plan. This way, they will finally test the astronomical money and power of the underworld for themselves. They decide to teach our protagonist a lesson after taking the backside. Their plan is to show our hero how scary this world actually is. Just then, they discover something terrifying. As they scream for their lives, it turns out they have been surrounded by monsters. All the knights and mages get active with some kind of lightning spell. A mage exposes an army of goblins which is completely armed. Unfortunately, if they are in high enough numbers, they can easily eliminate everyone present there. The thing is, these goblins have already taken down the Watchers and made it inside, but something seems different. The bodies of the goblins are covered with some kind of stones, and their build is entirely different. Plus, they are infused with mana, which unfortunately means that their physical ability is completely different from what the knights know. Soon, those goblins launch their assault as the very ground beneath them is torn apart. Night after night, the territory falls further into the goblins' clutches. Fortunately, someone steps up with a third circle rock wall and a second circle shield. It's none other than our boy Lon, stepping up to the plate. He chants the incantations he's been practicing, and as a result, most of the goblins are sucked into a massive magic orb erupting from the ground. With the command vacuum, the orb begins spitting out rocks that rain down on the goblins. Everyone watching is completely floored, but our protagonist reminds them to keep their eyes on the battlefield. Soon, the remaining goblins charge forward, prompting the knights and mages to launch their counterattack. Our hero doesn't let up either, using his magic to thin the herd, while he then backs him up. The battle rages from night until the break of dawn, ending in a human victory. But while everyone is wondering about Elon's insane power, he's actually turned pale, having just barely escaped death himself. Even though his daily spell limit has increased, it's still capped at a measly 3 or 4. In the heat of the fight, his mana pool completely bottomed out, leaving him as powerless as a normal person. Even with Ivan by his side, losing his ability to protect himself was absolutely terrifying. Seeing him shiver, Ivan asks if he's really okay, but our boy insists he's fine. He originally planned to go solo because everyone was being so loud, but putting that aside, he points out that incest is the real issue here. He wonders why a descent is happening now in the game. Divine descent was a freak phenomenon that occurred when an outer lord attempted to manifest. It causes any affected monsters to become significantly stronger and more vicious. Our protagonist wonders if this is even supposed to be happening. The outer lords, who should only appear after the 5 great sins awaken and the world is ruined, have already started descending upon this land. Our boy is getting a massive headache trying to make sense of it, especially since the kids haven't even awakened as the 5 great sins yet. Therefore, he decides he needs more intel to resolve this. If things keep going south like this, Elon's as good as dead. Finally, all the nobles arrive at the Rutagri ducal estate. Our count is feeling pretty nauseous after that long trek. And with that, the curtain rises on the grand social. Inside the ballroom, Elon notes that everything is dripping in gold, the perfect venue for a high society event. Even adds that their only goal here is to flaunt their massive wealth. Spotting Duke Rutagri walking nearby, our boy decides to keep his distance from the other nobles, as he personally hates networking. Unexpectedly, Frilled and Adorn approach our protagonist, awkwardly asking for a moment of his time. Surprisingly, they offer him top-tier goods from their territories, plus a chest of coins to help fund his own land. Seeing them act so submissive confuses our hero, but his naturally cold aura makes both lords start to shiver. They clearly regret ever messing with him. To understand why, we have to go back to the aftermath of the goblin battle. Lords Krill and Adorn were shaking in their boots after witnessing Elon's raw magical power. Out of nowhere, they had borrowed a mage from Baron Alman, a third circle mage hired specifically to flex the Baron's riches. Both lords asked her about the magic Elon unleashed during the fight. She bluntly stated that his magic actually surpassed her own capabilities. This led the lords to believe that our boy can use third circle magic or maybe even higher. They concluded he's hiding his true power and doesn't actually need any guards. Back in the prison, both nobles are trying to save their skins by bribing him. They immediately bow down and beg for mercy, while Elon just stands there, totally confused. He has no idea what they've misunderstood. He's usually forgiving, but since they crossed the line this time, he decides to handle them himself. He flips on his cold mode, leaving both lords trembling in fear, certain they were about to die. Later, Elon sends even to the information guild to dig up some dirt on the nobles. Soon, our protagonist spots 2 nobles having a secret chat, so he uses mana to enhance his hearing and eavesdrop. They were basically discussing the alliance between Duke Altia and Count Zenania, but other than that, it's nothing special. Since Altia and Zenania have a rocky history, our hero concludes their alliance won't last long. Just as he starts enjoying the food, he catches something new from their secret conversation. They mention that the head of this faction is none other than Palacio. Elon is shocked, thinking this has to be total nonsense. This is because he met Duke Altia when she was young and has met Kelia twice. Yet the current Count Zenania has never even met him. Even though he's getting another headache, he decides to let them gossip all they want. Soon, the third Duke of Camlin, Harmon, greets our boy. At that moment, Elon realizes that these social gatherings are being attended by other countries as well. With a nasty smirk, Harmon comments that he heard our hero only became a count through pure luck. He's curious to know the secret, which pisses off our protagonist big time. Just then, a middle-aged noble steps forward and asks why Carmen is insulting a noble from the Asteria kingdom. Parman is caught off guard. He thought bullying Elon would be a walk in the park. Parman basically traveled from a distant country specifically to take Rittiger's youngest daughter as his wife. He thinks he's so perfect that no woman could ever turn him down. Earlier at the banquet with his fiancée Rittiger's daughter, he made some trashy comments about other women. That attitude caused her to cancel the engagement. He was fuming, but then he spotted our hero from across the room. He decided to use Elon as a punching bag to vent his frustration, but the plan backfired completely when other nobles cornered him. The nobles stepping up for our protagonist are none other than Duke Rittiger from the aristocrat faction and Marquis Mardonio from the royalist faction. Both of them demand to know if Carmen is looking down on the entire Asteria kingdom. A figure from the moderate faction also steps in to handle the situation. Elon knows full well that these figures are the central pillars of the Asteria kingdom. Parman tries to deny it, but quickly folds and admits his mistake. But then, Marquis Mardonio whispers in his ear that he has seriously belittled Elon. Meanwhile, our hero watches this scene quietly, feeling like this whole situation is strangely familiar. Parman starts apologizing repeatedly, but the three nobles want more than just a simple sorry. This triggers some painful military service memories for our boy. Soon, Parman offers one last apology for his rudeness, and beats a hasty retreat. To the end, those three big-shot nobles turn to our protagonist, genuinely worried about whether he's okay. Meanwhile, he overhears another secret conversation between two nobles who are convinced the rumors must be true, seeing as all these key figures are approaching him. They believe that once Altia and Zanania enter the political arena, Palladio will become unstoppable. It's definitely a good thing he traveled with the nobles. Palladio is about to become insanely powerful and grant them strength. Our hero, however, is beyond exhausted from hearing these rumors. If this keeps up, the situation could become seriously troublesome for him, but for now, he just lets people talk since they were nothing but baseless rumors. Both Duke Rittigeri and Marquis Mardonio strike up a conversation with our boy. Mardonio mentions he's heard whispers that Elon is busy researching magic, adding that he recently acquired a top-tier artifact. He immediately decides to hand that artifact over to Elon. Unexpectedly, the other two had also prepared gifts for him. Since Elon can resist a good purr, he decides to keep quiet and accept them. Just like that, he's walked away with 2 magic artifacts and 5 mana potions. Early the next morning at Duke Rittigeri's annex, Mardonio reports to someone that Elon accepted the gifts. Among nobles, small tokens are just a formal greeting, but major items like artifacts carry much more weight. For those looking to join a faction, giving a high-value gift to the leader is basically a sign of acceptance. The Lady Mardonio is reporting to notes that Elon has effectively accepted them. Mardonio laughs, fully believing this was all Duchess Altia's doing. As it turns out, the woman standing before him is actually Duchess Altia herself, who remarks that they finally share the same goal. She asks about the others, and Mardonio reports that everyone is ready to be brought into the fold. He doesn't quite understand, however, why she's personally reaching out to the people Elon selected. He figures that once the necessary pawns are chosen, they'll undergo a transition ritual involving some very persuasive bribes. With rumors spreading like wildfire, it's obvious there's some major political shift happening, so he decides to capitalize on the situation as well. Meanwhile, Laureate is genuinely thrilled with the progress and decides it's time for the next step. Fast forward to the 4th day of the banquet, and Elon is still receiving unexpected gifts. Our protagonist figures people are reacting this way because of those fake rumors suggesting he has a close relationship with Altia and Sinania. Despite this, he just can't say no to all the free loot. Suddenly, Ivan sneaks up behind him, scaring the absolute life out of him. Later that evening, our hero learns that an outer god has already descended. According to Ivan, it happened in the northern region, and Kapan is in a state of total shock. They predict that Amethyst has some kind of connection to this outer god. On top of that, even found the person our hero has been looking for located in a small village in northern Ajulan. Right then and there, Elon decides to head straight for Caliban. Even when Ivan asks for the play-by-play, our boy keeps it vague, promising to explain everything once they are on the road. He orders Ivan to start the preparations. As Ivan leaves, Elon starts feeling a massive headache coming on. He was really hoping this part of the game wouldn't actually happen. Outer gods are on a whole different level of dangerous. The real problem is that there's no information regarding which specific outer god will manifest or perform a divine descent. That's exactly why our protagonist was grinding for information, but now all that prep work feels completely useless. The truth is, he never expected things to go south this quickly. Back when he was playing the game, Elon saw hundreds of possible outcomes, so the endgame is already crystal clear in his head. He knows for a fact that the allied kingdoms are destined to be destroyed and fall into total chaos after getting dragged into pointless wars on lands corrupted by power from the outer world. If that happens, our boy's life is basically on a countdown. Even though he's already got a plan to handle this kind of mess, timing is everything. Once an outer god descends, it enters a stabilization period for a few months before it fully awakens as a living god. During this window, the outer god can tap into its full power. Therefore, Our hero decides to try and squash the problem right then and there. In the meantime, he pens a letter, curious to see how that kid is doing these days. A week later, the letter reaches Diaz. Consequently, he pushes the upcoming schedule back by 2 weeks. The scene shifts to Parkin, a village in the north of the Ashudalan Kingdom. Alan is now standing face to face with the kid he's been looking for. That kid is actually Eleven, the main protagonist and playable character from the game's Psychedelia. He looks exactly like his official illustrations. Seeing how pretty he is, our boy actually starts to wonder if he's even a boy at all. He leans in and asks if Eleven knows who he is. Eleven just chuckles, saying he's simply happy to meet someone new. From this, our protagonist concludes that a main character is still a main character, no matter how much this world differs from the game. He knows for a fact that Eleven is destined to become incredibly famous and powerful. It's a surreal experience for our hero to meet a character he's used to controlling in the game. Right then, he hands Eleven a pouch of coins. Then, Even pulls out a briefcase containing a rare potion. Unexpectedly, he starts unloading a ton of gift boxes. In the end, Adlan dumps all those gifts onto Eleven. The kid is totally confused about why he's getting all this stuff, but our hero simply tells him it's an investment. Internally, he's decided to provide everything necessary to boost a protagonist's early game growth. He tells Eleven that he's going to be someone very important in the future, hoping the kid grows up strong enough to fight the outer gods in his place. As he heads out, our protagonist hopes he's successfully won the boy over. When Eleven reacts, Alan finally introduces himself. Deep down, he wants the kid to remember his name so that when Eleven hits the big time, he'll be grateful. Eleven runs up from behind and thanks him for his kindness with a bright, cheerful face. Our hero didn't expect him to be this upbeat, considering they were living in a dark fantasy world. Even asks if it's really okay to leave without a proper sit down, but our boy is confident the kid will figure it out since he's naturally sharp. At the moment, our hero feels like his life is at risk, and he doesn't have the luxury of time to slowly build a bond. He certainly can tell Even that he basically just set the protagonist on auto hunt mode. Right then, Even remarks that Eleven seems to have insane talent. He noticed the kid's mana is incredibly dense and swirling all around him. It even feels like he's already wearing artifacts. Adlan agrees, though he knows Eleven was supposed to start as just an ordinary person before going on adventures. He figures this must be another unexpected butterfly effect, making things play out differently than they did in the game. Since our boy is laser focused on his plan for a lazy life, he tells Even that Eleven is strong and worth the investment. Plus, Eleven is one of the few truly good-hearted people in this grim world, so our protagonist doesn't need to worry about a thing. Suddenly, Adlan asks Even if Daz would even want to meet him. He reflects on the fact that he never even visited his own orphanage, mostly because he was too scared. He never imagined things would turn out this way. Even points out that, at the very least, the children he supported are dying to see him face to face. 10 days later, Alun arrives at Kurdum, the capital of Kalaban. A massive line of carriages is gathered at the north gate, waiting to enter. Inside one of those carriages, Even lets out a yawn, feeling completely drained. Alun notes that long journeys are always taxing. Clutching an antique pendant, our boy reflects on how much they've traveled just to prepare for the upcoming fight against the outer god. Holding an antique pendant, our boy reflects on their journey across many lands to prepare for the showdown against the outer god. On top of that, he's brought a bunch of gifts for Diaz, wondering if the guy will actually dig them. Even snaps him out of it, mentioning that their carriage is about to reach the checkpoint. He steps out briefly, explaining that a simple eye check should be enough to pass into the capital. Inside, Alan is feeling pretty good about how fast things are moving until Even returns with bad news. Alan learns that they've been ordered to step aside, even though their eye check was already finished. Alan finally steps out, confronted by a knight named Varan, a direct disciple of the fourth sword master. Our protagonist has zero clue who this Kila guy is, though. Clearly irritated, he asks with a stone-cold expression why Varan brought a whole squad of knights with him. Varan closes the distance, explaining that a friend from the Ashudalan kingdom reached out because he'd been inconvenienced. Alan draws a blank at first, then the name Carmony suddenly clicks. Varan smugly notes that Alan really messed with the wrong person. In a flashback, we see Carmony contacting Varan via a magic orb, cursing our hero, and tipping Varan off that Alan is heading to Kalaban. The request: cripple him. Back in the present, Varan mentions he owes Carmony a massive favor, and plans to make a real scene out of this. With that, Varan and his lackeys surround Alan and Ivan. Alan just reflects on how Carmony ran away like a coward after picking a fight. Meanwhile, Varan offers to let them go if they hand over all their expensive gear. He steps forward, leveling his blade at our hero, and demanding compliance. Internally, Varan is feeling himself. He thinks he's got nothing to lose. He assumes our protagonist is just some low-ranking noble from the Asteria kingdom, a place with zero clout in the alliance and no connections in Kalaban. Meanwhile, our boy is visibly annoyed by these two bottom feeders plotting together and starts channeling energy into his hand. Varan, oblivious and overconfident, preps his attack, figuring his master will clean up any mess in the end. But before he can land a blow, someone lunges in and grabs him by the throat, making him scream. He's hoisted into the air, struggling to see who caught him. Even Alon is stunned by the newcomer. It's Diaz, and he asks Varan coldly what the hell he thinks he's doing with his benefactor. Too bad for Varan. He had no idea Diaz just won a duel against Kurga of the Snowfields. Diaz lands a brutal punch to his face, sending him hitting the dirt. He then grabs Varan by the head, ignoring his pleas to stop. Varan was also clueless that Count Palladio earned the title Swordless, or that the Count is the benefactor of the Master Knight himself, Diaz Macallihan. Taking full control of Varan, Diaz warns the lackeys that if they even twitch, things will get ugly. Then, he proceeds to absolutely wreck Varan, eventually slamming him into a nearby tree. Hedlon watches, stunned by the current Diaz. Diaz is livid, continuing to beat Varan, and stating he should be grateful they were in a spot where he can legally kill him. Still, that doesn't stop him from landing another heavy blow. Varan's face is now a swollen mess, but the beating continues. Behind them, Ivan remarks that he's giving Varan a legendary beatdown. However, our hero is lost in his own thoughts, stuck on Diaz calling him a benefactor. Our boy was actually expecting to be treated like a father figure, not just a benefactor. Seeing how much Diaz has leveled up, Alan feels a surge of pride, reflecting on what a fine young man he's become. Covering his face, he mutters that this must be what it feels like to see his son well raised, feeling like a proud father. Meanwhile, Ivan tries to snap him back to reality, pointing out that his son is currently pulverizing a guy. But Alon just feels touched that his boy would go to such lengths for him in a foreign land. He thinks his son is being sweet, but seeing Varan beaten to a literal pulp makes him realize this might be a bit much. He remembers that Diaz was actually one of the 5 great sins. Suddenly, Diaz turns and approaches him, his attitude shifting instantly. He bows to Alon and announces that he will be their escort. Somewhere in a frozen wasteland, the bodies of defeated warriors are being burned. Nearby, a knight stands tall with his flag, announcing that one of the 8 chiefs, Hokan the Great, and his entire clan have been eliminated. This is Dalman, the 3rd Sword of Calaban and captain of the Crimson Flame Knight Order. He declares a total victory for his order, and his soldiers roar in celebration. Dalman orders a regroup at headquarters, but on the way back, he's seething. Despite this massive win, he's paranoid about losing his standing to some newbie who just became a Master Knight. Gritting his teeth, he decides he'll use any dirty, illegal trick in the book to ensure he stays on top. Calaban and the barbarians have a long, honor-bound history of warfare, but Dalman threw that out the window. He deceived Kulkan, ambushing him with his full force, while the chief was alone, wiping out his clan. Strangely, Kulkan's body vanished during the chaos. Dalman figures the barbarians hit it, but even if the guy is somehow alive, the poison Dalman used should finish him off soon. He shrugs it off, convinced everything will be settled once he gets back to Calaban and reports his achievement. But the vibe shifts fast. He and his squad feel an impossible pressure coming from their forward base. Standing right in the middle of it is Kulkan, eyes burning with pure killing intent as he calls out Dalman. Dalman draws his sword, baffled by the overwhelming aura. He tells himself Kulkan should be dead, but a dark, sinister voice booms out, asking Dalman how he dared to defy the honor of the Grand Secret Tree. This entity is channeling power into Kulkan, creating a level of terror that would make even a superhuman someone capable of slaying hundreds shudder. Sweating buckets, Dalman mutters that this isn't Kulkan, but something else entirely. The voice demands an answer again. Dalman snaps back, arguing it was Kulkan's own fault for being naive enough to believe in honorable duels on a battlefield. Instead of talking, he unleashes a wave of flames from his sword, incinerating the surrounding area. But Kulkan stands there, completely untouched. He notes that Dalman has reached an impressive level for a human and offers one last tool. Dalman ignores the offer, and orders his squad to prepare for all-out war. On the flip side, Kulkan preps for the slaughter. Since Dalman acted like a total barbarian, Kulkan decides he doesn't deserve an honorable death. At his command, Kulkan's army of the dead begins to move. The corpses scream in agony as they march, begging for someone to end their suffering. In a flash, Kulkan wounds Dalman with nothing but his bare hand, making the captain scream. Then, Kulkan shatters the ground with a single move, launching Dalman's knights into the air. With one devastating kick, Kulkan obliterates the airborne knights, and blood begins to rain down like a storm. After that, Kulkan faces off against Dalman. Without hesitation, he pierces his hand straight through Dalman's body. Dalman can even process what Kulkan is trying to do before he collapses to the ground, overwhelmed by an unbearable wave of pain. Kulkan reflects on how everyone in this place is a barbarian, born from the dead whose passings were never acknowledged. As the undead soldiers clash with Dalman's men, Vulcan announces that this is the Bloody Colosseum. Then, Lutus, the god of barbarians, and father of duels, personally grants them an honorable death. Vulcan needs to prove that he isn't barbaric himself through a formal duel. The scene shifts back to the entrance of Caliban, where Diaz asks Alon for the honor of escorting him. Seeing Diaz bow is a total shocker. The thing is, Diaz the Swordless has pride that reaches the sky. He even beat the living hell out of the second prince for insulting his sister, and yet no one dared to say a word to him. Furthermore, he isn't courteous to anyone except the king. That is exactly why the public is losing their minds seeing him bow to a count from another country. Watching him show such respect to our boy, people start wondering who this Count Palladio actually is. Diaz invites Alon and Ivan into his luxurious carriage. Seeing the opulence, Alon reflects that this is definitely going to attract a lot of attention. Meanwhile, Ivan decides to follow them in the transport carriage. Later, Alon finally arrives at Diaz's mansion, and is absolutely stunned to see how massive the place is. Stepping inside and following Diaz, our hero feels a suffocating silence, making him wonder if Diaz is feeling uncomfortable around him. Letting out a sigh, Alon decides to get straight to the point, believing it's the best way to show his respect and consideration. Eventually, they enter a room. Right at the entrance, our boy straightforwardly explains that he is here because he has a request. The word request catches Diaz off guard. As Alon confirms it, Diaz feels a sense of warmth because it's a request, not an order. Seeing him act a bit different, Alon asks if something is wrong, internally stressing out and wondering if Diaz thinks he's being shameless. But Diaz tells him to wait, as he wants to continue their discussion properly. After sitting down, Diaz gestures for Alon to sit in a separate chair. This makes our protagonist wonder if the host shouldn't be the one in the highest seat, but internally, he likes it feels like Diaz is treating him with the respect one would show a father. Clearing his throat, Alon reveals he actually has a favor to ask, acknowledging it might be a hassle. He mentions he's heading north and asks if Diaz will accompany him. Without even hearing the full details, Diaz agrees without complaint. Alon stares at him in disbelief. He definitely didn't expect him to agree that fast. Diaz calmly says that he was already preparing for an expedition to the north anyway. Learning this, Alon feels incredibly lucky. And he reveals his second, more difficult request. He wants Diaz to let him borrow the ring of the Mad One from Caliban's treasure vault. Meanwhile, a soldier informs the vice captain that he has just returned from the escort mission. The vice captain praises him for his work, though internally he knows the soldier did very little since the captain handled the mission himself. Diaz's sister, though, teams when she hears about the escort mission, thinking her brother must have a very important guest. In a flashback, she has ordered the vice captain to delay the northern schedule by 2 weeks. When the officer asked for a reason, Diaz happily mentioned that his benefactor would be arriving soon. Back in the present, the vice captain reflects that he has never seen the captain make such an expression before. While thinking, he mentions that Count Palladio from the Asteria Kingdom has just arrived, causing Silly to react with amazement. Back in the meeting room, Alon asks if it is possible for him to borrow the ring of the Mad One from Caliban's treasury. Internally, he believes this is an unreasonable request that will put him in serious debt to the royal family, but he knows the ring is vital for his plan. Just as Diaz is about to say yes, Ivan enters the room and apologizes for being late. Diaz's speech is cut off, and Alon thinks that Ivan entered just in time. He then plans to lighten the atmosphere by giving gifts to Diaz. Alon comments that Ivan has come at the right time, but beneath those words, he is actually asking if the items were brought as requested. He even gives a thumbs up, saying he is going to bring them in soon. The room fills with gifts meant for Diaz. The captain is confused, so Alon states these are items he prepared specifically for him, even recommending a shoestring tie. Internally, Alon is satisfied to have improved the atmosphere. He feels proud, reflecting on how much consideration he put into choosing that shoestring, and he hopes the captain likes it. To his surprise, Diaz only says thanks. Our hero pauses right there, and after a brief silence, asks if Diaz is going to open them. However, the captain turns his head, remarking that it would be discourteous and that he will open the gifts when he is alone. Alon's excitement fades as he thinks there is no need for such formality, wondering if Diaz dislikes the gifts or is simply trying to be respectful. After clearing his throat, Alon says that if the request for the ring puts Diaz at a disadvantage, he can offer compensation. Diaz cuts him short, stating he will bring the ring of the Mad One instantly. Alon is startled and asks if the captain heard what he just said about its current location. Diaz nods, mentioning the location is the royal treasury of Caliban. Our hero asks if that wouldn't be difficult, but with a plain face, Diaz mentions it would usually take a week. After thinking for a bit, he says that dealing with the king is the most bothersome part, and suggests he will just take 50 people to go get it. Alon does not believe him, and takes it as a joke. However, with a very serious face, Diaz asks if he should start right now, which makes Alon doubt if it was a joke at all. He tells the captain he doesn't need to go that far. Understanding something, Diaz decides to retrieve it as soon as possible anyway. Alon is stunned, as he did not expect him to try so hard to provide the ring. He feels grateful to see Diaz care about him, though he thinks this level of effort is a bit much. Soon, they step out of the meeting room. In the hallway, Silly comes to meet her brother. Ivan steps forward and casually greets her. She instantly recognizes him and calls him Brother Ivan. Both seem happy to finally meet once again. Alon then realizes she is the younger sister he ordered Ivan to save. From the game, he learned how she was supposed to die, but seeing her in person now, he thinks she looks a lot like Diaz. Meanwhile, Diaz stands there looking displeased. He calls his sister over and tells her not to address Ivan as brother, but as Mr. Alon never expected him to act like that, even if the captain has a sense of loss regarding his family. On the other hand, Ivan is in great shock at being called Mr. He thinks Diaz cherishes her more than he thought, picturing the captain as being super protective of his sister. In the middle of this, Alon comes to understand why Diaz is being so nice to him. It is because he saved Silly. He never thought of it this way, as he was always focused on the fact that he had simply prevented Diaz from becoming this sin. He never really saw it that way. He was always so fixated on the fact that he'd stopped Diaz from becoming the sin he felt tainted by. He wondered if Diaz would even bother helping him with anything at this point, but he immediately brushed that idea aside. Then, Silly turns toward our hero and recognizes him as Count Palladio. Alon confirms his identity, and she mentions hearing that he'd ordered Ivan to save her. Alon just casually plays it off, saying he only did what needed to be done. Internally, he reflects that if she had died, her brother would have become a full-blown villain. He'd even made sure the two of them crossed paths at the perfect moment just so things would go off without a hitch. Clutching her brother's hand, Silly sincerely thanks Alon for saving her life. Our hero is caught off guard even if his motives weren't exactly pure. Being thanked like that actually feels pretty great. Eventually, the protagonist stays at the mansion for a few days. A day later, Davies enters Alon's room and presents him with the ring. While sipping his tea, Alon is floored that it only took a single day. He wonders how the captain managed to bring it back so quickly. Just then, Ivan bursts in, desperately calling for our hero. He informs Alon that he's just heard some wild news. When Alon asks for the details, Ivan mentions that Diaz caused a massive scene at the palace. He demanded the ring, and when the second prince started nitpicking him, Diaz just slapped him a couple of times in response. The scene shifts, and after 3 days of prep, Alon goes on the northern expedition with the solar eclipse knights. 2 weeks later, at the forward outpost on Kalaban's northern border, he hears the grim news a night squad was wiped out on the northern battlefield by Kulkan. In an army camp on the northern front, someone shouts at the mere thought of retreating. He asks if the messenger has lost his mind, suggesting they turn their backs on the barbarians. The informant fires back, arguing that the count has already seen for himself that the soldiers are severely wounded. Since the first sword went into seclusion, the informant believes they don't stand a chance of winning. During the meeting, Diaz claps his hands to shut everyone up. Then, the fourth sword, admits that everyone's opinions are valid, and suggests they should make a decision after calming down. Outside the meeting room, Fella sigh, noting that an outer god is destroying their bases with an army of undead. The third sword, Daman, fell at the eastern base, while the second sword, Hirayama, has been critically wounded at the western base. He comments that he can already see the destruction looming from where they are. Fala agrees, saying the sky is being devoured by an ominous mana and has turned a blood-red hue. This is only visible to those who have reached a high realm and opened their eyes to it. It's a bone-chilling landscape of mana. Fila remarks that this aura keeps drawing his gaze and thinks retreating is the best option for now. Soon, Diaz spots smoke rising from somewhere. As he follows it, he sees Alon grilling sweet potatoes over hot coals. Meanwhile, Alon keeps muttering words like diffraction, conveyance, and focus. Diaz wonders where he even picked up those terms. Then, he hears someone yelling. It's a lady with blue hair who is complaining that she can't focus. She tells the soldiers their treatment is finished, and there's nothing more she can do. She knows she's there to investigate the barbarians' ritual, but one of the injured soldiers begs her, saying that people come before investigations, asking her to help just one more time. Diaz recognizes those soldiers as the King's Grace Knight Order of the Second Sword, and the girl as the Vice Master of the Blue Magic Tower. The lady turns away, telling them she can only watch over the wounded. Seeing Diaz in her path, she gets irritated, and wants him to move, but she gets the chills when she spots Alon in the distance, staring at her coldly. Thea goes pale the moment she sees Alon's terrifying, frozen expression. She doesn't understand how in the world he happened to be there. Spotting the Vice Master, our hero realizes the rumors about her being here were true. Later, Thea shivers, as she fearfully murmurs that the medicine Alon mentioned is out of stock, and will take a bit more time to prepare. She also mentions how exhausted she is. Our protagonist tells her he was hoping she would help him, and that he can understand her situation. Internally, Alon thinks that maybe he was asking for too much. Thea flinches and, while clearly scared, tries to reassure him by saying she can absolutely get it done. But then our boy mentions that his finances are a bit tight right now, so he can't pay upfront. Sweating, Thea says there's no problem with that and that she'll accept a single gold coin for the job. After thinking it over, Alon decides not to turn down such a steal. On the other hand, Thea's subordinates are in total shock, as they never expected her to smile like that. They internally reflect that she's basically letting herself be scammed, and wonder if she's completely lost her mind. Hida immediately runs off, telling our hero she's going to make the medicine right away and serve it fresh. Her subordinates' jaws drop as they see how impressively our protagonist is devouring his grilled sweet potato. The scene shifts, and inside the meeting room, a truly evil aura makes its entrance. Phyla stands up and asks Diaz if he feels that energy. Diaz simply remarks that they are under attack. Outside their camp, a whole army of undead has appeared. Everyone charges, and soon, the war between the soldiers and the undead army begins. Those undead let out agonizing screams. He unleashes her ice shards, which immobilize a ton of undead before the shards explode. On the other hand, Diaz is gracefully using his swordsmanship to eliminate the horde. The entire sky turns red as wild lightning strikes. It is an overwhelming force capable of spreading pure destruction. As a heavy bolt of thunder hits the ground, an evil being emerges from it, calling humans savages. This being is the destructive god of the barbarians, Ludus. However, Phyla soon dashes toward Ludus and lands a strike on him, but unfortunately, it doesn't even leave a small scratch. Phyla is shocked that even his quick sword didn't work. In return, Ludus lands a powerful blow on Phyla, stating that those who proclaim the nobility of their souls will not be granted an honorable death. Tragically, Phyla loses his life as his head is severed. Unexpectedly, Alon steps up. As he turns to Ludus, he declares that in accordance with the Oath of Calgunia, he, Avlon Paltio, presents himself to honor this holy promise. Our hero requests a duel of barbarians. Listening to him, Ludus starts to laugh loudly. It amuses him that someone actually knows the oath of his era, which is quite unexpected. Then, with a snap of his fingers, he transforms his undead army again as a sinister aura surrounds them. Ludus addresses our protagonist as his noble opponent and welcomes him to his bloody Colosseum, a place where no one can interfere. A massive battleground is soon formed with the help of the blood of the undead. He declares that in accordance with the Grand Pact, he, Ludus, accepts this sacred duel of barbarians. Meanwhile, our boy is trembling in the face of such a terrifying presence. Alon admits he was wrong. He didn't think the disabled entity was already this close to manifesting. The thing is, the closer and outer, the more power a god gains, the closer they get to fully incarnating, which is essentially equivalent to the 5 mortal sins. Trembling, our hero reflects on the fact that if he hadn't just downed that potion of excellence, he would have passed out already. He admits to himself that this is his final chance before the manifestation is complete. With that, Alon announces the start of their duel. A duel of barbarians is played turn by turn, and as Ludus and Alon begin, our protagonist recalls rule number 1: the person challenged holds the initiative. As Ludus prepares to strike, he amusingly decides to play the Song of Ruin. The surrounding human soldiers frantically tell one another to take cover, but Alon doesn't budge. He cites rule number 2: the defender cannot move outside of their turn, and if struck by an indirect force, they cannot move at all. Ludus calls this magnificent, impressed by the boy's sense of honor. Rule number 3 dictates that the opponents swap positions at the end of each turn, with a single turn consisting of 1 attack and 1 defense. Realizing it is now the defender's turn, Alon reflects that a basic defense would be useless against an entity like Ludus. With surgical precision, our hero activates his ability Immobilization Condensation Reinforcement Deepening. A thick black smoke billows out of a fluid-filled bottle Alon is holding. He thinks to himself that even if he has to burn through every drop of his magic today just to block a single attack, he will do it right here, and now. Ludus unleashes a devastating attack toward our protagonist, but Alon doesn't flinch or lose his stance for a second. The impact of Ludus's attack results in a massive blast that completely shatters the ground beneath them. Once the dust and smoke finally settle, the human soldiers including Pia and Diaz wonder if our boy managed to survive. Fortunately, a massive magic circle forms just behind Alon. Even though he's in a raw state, he is somehow still standing. Just then, the pendant he's wearing begins to disperse into the air. He recalls a past moment when Pia gave him the potion of excellence and the Remithian potion. That second potion allows him to soothe even the most intense pain, though at the time, she wondered when he actually planned to use it. Now, in the present, clutching the bottle, our hero reflects on how well it works without it. He wouldn't have been able to stay on his feet. Alon feels that everything has unfolded exactly according to his plan. He pours the potion directly onto himself. Even though he knows he won't fully recover instantly, he believes it should give him enough strength to move. The duel with Ludus is governed by specific turn-based rules, and Alon knew that understanding these rules before stepping into the fight was vital to minimizing the outer god's actions. Through these rules, the hero successfully dragged him into the duel. Our boy almost saw the pearly gates, but thanks to the pendant of reincarnation and a healing potion, he made it out alive. The activation of the Ring of the Mad One requires the user to be in a state of being both almost dead and alive at the same time. Once the ring's restriction is met, a shimmering aura surrounds him. Alon knows that Ludus considers duels sacred, so the god won't defend himself or interrupt the process. Our guy remembers that in the game, Helotus would always take the first hit, and certain enhancements could remove the time limit instead of costing a turn. But this is reality, not a game, and there is no time limit. The first restriction is that the laws of the world are twisted when magic is used in a land of extreme cold. The second restriction is that the laws are twisted when magic is used while in a near-death state. The third restriction is that using magic against a god twists the laws further. Finally, the fourth restriction is that when magic is used against Helotus, known as the god of duels, the very laws of the world are warped. Meanwhile, our boy gathers every ounce of his mana to launch an attack to take Helotus down. The strike hits home, carving a wide hole right through Helotus, yet the god stands there unbothered, simply affirming that the hero is indeed powerful. Alan is shaken, thinking he has failed since that strike drained his entire mana pool. However, Helotus notices that our boy is carrying on a specific will, and can't believe that Alan already possesses the class. Then, something strange happens. Helotus begins to evaporate and disappear, affirming that the duel was truly incredible. As our hero stands there shocked, Helotus quotes that he should keep an eye on the black and blue ones. Since he lost the duel, Helotus grants our boy his belt along with his authority. As he departs, he tells Alan that he will be the one to carry their will by remembering them. He further instructs Alan to call out his name when the usurpers break free, revealing his real name, the Wicked One, before vanishing. Later, the expedition team gets busy recovering the dead and preparing for the return to Calaburn. Meanwhile, inside the carriage, little Miss Yapper won't stop pestering our boy with questions. Alan wonders if she actually knows anything about these black and blue ones. She gets nervous and abruptly runs out of the carriage. Alan thinks to himself that receiving appreciation for doing the bare minimum makes him feel like a cruel villain. The one thing he can't stop thinking about is why the god disappeared after a single failed attack. The belt handed over to him is the belt of the Forgotten One. On the inside of the belt, an inscription directs him to make his way to Kara, the city of the ancient god, leaving him to wonder what special secret lies there. Then, Dies enters the carriage, asking if he should kill the mage who left the carriage without giving Alan a proper goodbye. Nervously, our boy calms him down and tells him no. 2 weeks later in Kurtham, the expedition officially ends. Dies reports the results of the subjugation to the king, and the ring is safely returned. As he leaves, a fleet of carriages filled with gifts is sent along with him. Alan is happy about the haul, considering he invested everything he had into saving his own life. Later, Dies wonders if he could ever become as strong as our hero, which leaves Alan a bit puzzled. Alan knows it's only a matter of time before Dies realizes his own massive potential, so he assures him that with the right effort and work, he can reach whatever level he desires. As they sit in the carriage, Dies wonders why Alan asks him for favors instead of just ordering him around. Our boy turns to him and genuinely wonders who would ever treat their own family like that, forcing Dies to rethink everything. As the carriage departs, Alan finds himself sobbing as he thinks about Dies he sponsored the guy purely out of goodwill with no ulterior motives. Later that night, Dies sits in his room, reflecting on how he only followed the hero to repay his kindness, but ended up receiving even more in return. He lifts his hand, attempting to perform magic. All he wishes for is to have a talent for magic just like Alan. While he ponders the concept of family, the carriage finally reaches home. Alan is overjoyed to be back since it's been 3 long months. He accidentally opens his workroom door, but immediately runs away. All he needs right now is his bedroom and some serious rest. However, he finds himself returning to the room before he can even properly relax. He begins working once again, waiting for the date he can finally laze around like a true noble, and stop acting like a fantasy salaryman. After that, he takes an entire week off, finally rewarding himself for the bare minimum, but after a week, he starts to feel uncomfortable, so he decides to look up the terms that Eugilus gave him. Eugilus's words are just roaming around in Alan's mind, and his name sounds weirdly familiar, like some sort of Eastern god. Still, the most baffling thing is his total disappearance. He wonders why they're reappearing now, and whether there is a chance that the other outer gods might start showing up as well. Unlike the 5 deadly sins, these guys actually give a warning before they arrive. He gets up, aiming to head to Kara, but he can't reach it despite even knowing the location. The reason is that it hasn't actually been discovered by explorers yet, so going there would be a massive hassle. Suddenly, Even enters the room, complaining that it's freezing. It turns out one of Alan's spells is paying off. Bro basically has a magical air conditioner running. Then Ivan reports that a hidden city has been located, which catches our boy off guard. On the other hand, the 5 deadly sins are having a meeting through a crystal orb. Usually, these meetings only last about 10 minutes, but not today. Diaz, who usually stays quiet, decides to tell a story, which gets the rest of them excited. However, that excitement quickly fades into pure annoyance since he keeps blabbering for another 50 minutes. When he's finally asked to stop, he just shushes them, and continues for another 3 hours, setting the record for the longest call ever. Back to our boy when he enters his room. It is completely filled with presents. These gifts are from various nobles, and all of them are high-value items, so he simply keeps them without saying a word. But the arrival of gifts doesn't stop even after a whole week. They keep coming, showing the sheer significance of having a connection with a knight. Even a month later, the presents are still arriving, making him want to return the excessive gifts. In the capital of the Asteria Kingdom, a grand council meeting is being held, and our boy is late for his very first session. His nervousness is evident in the huge, awkward steps he's taking. But what he even notices is that the nobles are actually walking in a line behind him. When Alan finally reaches the council hall, it's empty, so he takes a seat way in the back. The line of nobles just glares at him, so he gets up and moves to the middle. They still stare at him, so he's forced to sit right at the front among the heads of each faction. The discomfort is pretty apparent on his face, but he sits there anyway, as the meeting finally commences. Our boy already wants to leave. It is announced that the Kull faction has been granted voting rights, and its representative is Count Palasha. Our boy finally begins to pay attention since he's totally unaware of any Kull faction. He looks behind him and sees two women smiling and sitting together. Naturally, our boy assumes that the Kull faction might belong to them, and that they merge their alliances to form a new faction. Just as he's trying to process all this new information, he is called out as the representative of the Kull faction. The dots immediately connect, and he realizes that he is actually the representative of the newly formed Shadow faction, which almost drives him crazy. In an extremely icy land, a cloaked man stands at the edge of a cliff, eager to see someone's progress. Back to the horrors of the council, our boy is unable to believe that he has been chosen as the representative of the faction. He could never have imagined becoming a villainous mastermind overnight, which sounds straight out of a movie to him. After his long silence, the meeting continues. As it ends, Alan looks like a total zombie while being congratulated. He's the main character for the day, whether he likes it or not. His thoughts are interrupted when Countess Xanania and Duchess Alcia approach him. All he remembers are a few light conversations with them a while back. He's so paranoid now that he's convinced he probably has a split personality that handled everything behind his back. After talking with the two women for a while, he realizes that Alan had apparently ordered an alliance between them, and the Kull faction was formed through instructions sent to Xanania. Sending him presents was just their way of being accepted. He swears to himself that he never told them to do any of it, because as far as he remembers, he only sent an apology letter. But now that he thinks about it, some of those letters didn't really make sense to him at the time. There is no way he can cover for himself now, because people from the shadows are known to have very peculiar sensibilities, and the ones from the game aren't to be messed with. So, the only thing he can do is take on the position for now and retire later. The two of them wonder what his plans are from here, to which he tries to act cool and suggests sweeping up the underworld. Then he bluntly turns his back and bids them farewell before any more questions are asked, questions he definitely doesn't have the answers to. Later, he arrives home, and Ivan is surprised to see him back so early. Alan gives no explanation and decides to head back to the colony. Meanwhile, the two ladies have heard exactly what they needed to hear. Blinking their glasses, they look forward to seeing the underworld he made it. On the other hand, an agent floats in the sky, locating Alan in order to kill him. But he is a little annoyed by Alan's connection with the knight, and wants no unnecessary enemies, which is something even his master advises. Still, he's committed, because the mission is quite significant. A while back, in Duke Kamalani's mansion, the agent steps in and Lord Carmen greets him. Suddenly, the agent is attacked by multiple men, but with one hit, he takes them all down. Carmen is impressed by his strength and proposes that he kill Alan. He is sure that his offer won't be denied since he is also known as the Tyrant of Ashudalan. The agent assures him that there won't be any issue, as long as the payment is right. Then the agent doubts whether Carmen would even be able to afford the costs. Carmen instantly takes out 4 abyss entities. Seeing them in his hands, the agent is shaken because those items are distributed in the black market only in minute quantities. The entities can provide special powers, which makes them extremely expensive. Greed for power makes the agent wonder how strong he would become if he used them, especially since he has experienced a small quantity of them before. The agent then leaves, assuring Carmen that he will be back soon. Meanwhile, Carmen is left alone with an evil grin, knowing that Alan will soon be done for. A while later, we see the agent meeting Seeker, known as Duke Camelon, the head of the nobles of the Ashudalan Kingdom and the power behind the underworld of the Federation Kingdom. This man is the father of that same scumbag who ordered the agent to assassinate our boy. The father is disappointed that his son stole the abyss entities for this job, but the man decides not to interfere, and lets the ball roll. This is just fine for the agent, as he will be getting the abyss entities as a reward for the mission. Right then, a guy named Chutro, the underworld power of the Ashudalan Kingdom, arrives. This guy seems to be the reason Seeker didn't interfere with his son's plans. According to Chutro, the Kull faction is getting massive with Palladio acting as the head, so the elimination of our boy is necessary. Back with the agent, he is hovering in the air, feeling exhilarated that the abyss entities will be his soon enough. Just as he is about to make his move, the assassin gets assassinated by some unknown force. This blue-haired boy seems to be on our side, and that's precisely why he felt it necessary to eliminate the threat this man posed to our boy.